Chapter 3959. The auction continued, and the auctioneer on the stage said in a clear voice, "The next item to be auctioned is a portion of true sun flame. Not long ago, a sun star in a large territory was extinguished. I'm sure many of you have heard about it. This portion of true sun flame came from that extinguished sun star." As she spoke, a maid walked up from the backstage with a round bowl in her hands. Flames flickered in the bowl as a wave of heat swept out. As soon as the auctioneer finished speaking, the entire auction hall went into an uproar. Yang Kai could clearly sense powerful divine senses extending from the private rooms to investigate the true sun flame. Yang Kai was also a little surprised. He hadn't expected that the true sun flame of a sun star would appear here. After all, this place was too far away. However, thinking about it, it wasn't strange. Many people had obtained true sun flame back then, and the Fengyin auction house was backed by one of the 72 blessed lands. It wasn't strange for it to be auctioned here. However, the lowest grade of true sun flame was 4th grade, and there were even 5th grade ones. He wondered what grade this item would be auctioned. Even Pei Buan and Gong Sun Hong were only at the 4th stage of Heaven Splitter. A single piece of 4th stage Heaven Splitter material had a chance of creating an expert on the same level as them, so it was only natural that they would pay attention to it. Yang Kai understood. Most of the items auctioned before were things needed by those in the Emperor realm who hadn't condensed a Dao seal yet. The next item to be auctioned should be things that people like him desired. 4th grade true sun flame. The starting price is 100,000, and each increment must be no less than 5,000. The auctioneer smiled and gestured. As soon as the auctioneer finished speaking, 7 or 8 people in the hall called out bids, each voice sounding extremely eager. Yang Kai was a little surprised. He had thought that this auction would be exclusive to the VIPs in the private rooms. But who would have thought that the individual guests sitting in the hall would also have the ability to bid? However, their voices were quickly suppressed by a bidder in a private room. 150,000. As soon as this price was announced, the voices in the hall immediately fell silent. For a level 4 heaven opening material, 150,000 was basically the normal price. When they were in the Qiqiao land, Daiyu had told Yang Kai that a level 1 heaven opening material was 1,500. A level 2 heaven opening material was 10 times that of a level 1 heaven opening material, and a level 3 heaven opening material was 10 times that of a level 2 heaven opening material. The stainless golden dew that Yang Kai bought in the Kikikyo land was a grade 3 material and cost him 15,000 gold coins. However, in an auction house, the price would naturally be slightly higher. If it was someone who didn't lack money, it wouldn't be strange no matter how high the price was. Not to mention that 150,000 was the normal price. As expected, the voice of 160,000 immediately sounded from another private room. The people sitting in these private rooms were all reputable figures in Star City, who didn't have a million heaven-opening pills on them. They were all in the heaven-opening realm, so they naturally did not need the sun's true flame. However, they also had juniors and disciples, and it was rare for a 4th-rank material to appear in the auction house. Who would be willing to miss it? The sun's true flame was very popular, and the guests in the 2 private rooms continued to bid. 2 people eventually raised the price to 200,000 gold coins. At this time, the private room that had bid first had already fallen silent. It was obvious that this price had exceeded his bottom line. It wasn't that he couldn't afford 200,000 gold coins, but every heaven-opening realm cultivator had to condense the yin, yang, and 5 elements. If one material was 200,000 gold coins, then 7 materials would be 1,400,000 gold coins. Moreover, even at the final juncture, there was no guarantee that he would succeed. This price was not small. "Shopkeeper son, thank you for letting me win." A hearty laugh came from the private room that had bid second. Shopkeeper son coldly snorted, but didn't say anything. "Drop the hammer." That voice rang out again. The auctioneer looked around with a smile and raised the hammer. 200,000 going once, 200,000 going twice. She glanced over at Yang Kai, secretly wondering if this little brat would make a bid at the last moment. Just now, He and the other person had been in the limelight. After the Great Tao Pill, the two of them had basically taken all of the auction items, leaving no room for anyone else to interfere. However, after calling out twice and not seeing that Yang Kai had any intention of bidding, she couldn't help laughing inwardly. She felt that she was overthinking things. Since this person had bought the Great Tao Pill, it meant that he hadn't condensed a Tao seal yet. So what was the point of buying these fourth-rank materials? Even if he had a lot of money, he shouldn't spend it like this. 300,000. Yang Kai raised his hand. The auctioneer's hammer immediately froze in midair, and her beautiful eyes widened as she stared in Yang Kai's direction. The hall was also in an uproar. In the past, although Yang Kai and Lao Bai had won the auction with absolute advantage each time, the value of the auction items before wasn't too high. They were all fought over by a group of people from the Emperor realm, so in the eyes of those who were truly rich, it wasn't much. However, it was different this time. To suddenly increase the price by 100,000, was he trying to make things difficult for her? Brat, which sex disciple are you? The heaven-opening realm cultivator, who had bid 200,000, was almost angered to death. He stared through the private room, and felt that this brat was really detestable. He had given him a surprise at the last moment. Was he deliberately slapping his own face? If you have the money to bid, then shut up. Why do you care which sex disciple I am? Yang Kai didn't even turn his head. The person in the private room was choked to the point that he couldn't say anything. He was a fourth-rank heaven-opening realm cultivator, so he couldn't possibly argue with someone from the Emperor realm. What kind of scandal was this? The youth in the front row looked back at Yang Kai again, and the suspicion in his eyes became even stronger. The auctioneer was stunned for a long time before she came back to her senses. She chuckled dryly. 300,000 going once, 300,000 going twice, 300,000 going thrice. The mallet fell, and the deal was struck. Without stopping, the auctioneer continued. The item that will be auctioned is also a fourth-rank material. 300,000. Before she could finish speaking, a bid came from within the hall. The auctioneer's words were stuck in her throat, making her feel incredibly uncomfortable. She stared speechlessly in Yang Kai's direction, her expression somewhat annoyed. She thought to herself, what's wrong with this person? You should at least wait for me to finish speaking. You don't even know what the material is, yet you directly bid 300,000? Is there something wrong with your head? The entire hall and the private room were completely silent. Everyone's gazes were focused on Yang Kai. Sitting to the side, Luo Hai felt like there was a thorn in her side, and her expression was filled with worry as she advised in a low voice. Lord Yang, this price is too high. It's fine, Yang Kai smiled. Do you have that much money? At this moment, a person's voice sounded. It was the young man sitting in the front row of Yang Kai. He looked at him and sneered. You've bid for so many things. Do you have the money to pay the bill? He came to the auction this time for the Great Path pills. Originally, he still had hopes of bidding for a set, but after being repeatedly messed up by Yang Kai, he lost all hope. Although Yang Kai let him off previously, he still held a grudge. After seeing Yang Kai bid for so many things without batting an eyelid, he had always suspected that Yang Kai was here to cause trouble. Now, he finally couldn't hold it in any longer and launched an attack. As long as he could prove that Yang Kai was indeed here to cause trouble, then the Great Path pills he bid for previously would not count, and he would still have a chance. Thinking of this, he immediately stood up, cupped his hands towards the auction stage, and said, Master of the Fengyan auction house, I suspect that this person is bidding maliciously and has bad intentions. I request a verification to see if he has the ability to pay the bill. That's right, I think so too. A voice immediately came from the private room, where Yang Kai had snatched the Grand Sun Real Flame. A verification of the verification is a good idea. This kid is indeed a bit of a troublemaker. Another private room also agreed. It wasn't that Yang Kai had offended them, but if they allowed Yang Kai to continue acting so recklessly, then they wouldn't have any hope in the following auctions. Who wouldn't want to buy something at an auction, especially when the following items were all 4th grade and above? Therefore, after the young man in the front row finished speaking, Many private rooms echoed his words. In room A6, the corner of Pei Buen's mouth twitched. This kid is full of evil tricks. Why didn't I see it before? At this time, how could he not know that Yang Kai was indeed here to cause trouble? However, he didn't know what kind of enmity he had with the Fengyan auction house, that he actually wanted to make a move at the auction. Wasn't this smashing their reputation? How could there be a good ending? This kid probably wouldn't be able to pass the verification of the verification. Although he had given Yang Kai 1 million heaven-opening pills as a reward last time, the value of the items he was bidding for this time had far exceeded that amount. However, he wasn't very worried about Yang Kai's safety. After all, he was a member of the First Inn. At most, he would be kicked out of the auction house, and his reputation would be ruined. On the stage, the auctioneer looked in a certain direction backstage with some difficulty. There was an elderly man sitting there, and since the start of the auction, he had been motionless with his eyes closed. This elderly man wasn't Yun Zhenhua, but he was also a mid-rank heaven-opening expert of the Fengyan auction house. He was overseeing this place to prevent others from causing trouble. With so many people unanimously requesting the verification of the items, the elderly man naturally heard their voices. He slowly stood up and walked to the stage. Someone in the private room said, "Elder Yu, I'll have to trouble you to make a move and see if this kid has the financial resources." The elderly man frowned. There had never been such a precedent in the auction house before. After all, with the Fengyan auction house's reputation, no one dared to go back on their word. Everyone was bidding according to their ability. However, Yang Kai's previous actions were really suspicious. He also wanted to see the situation, so he only nodded. With a flash, he directly appeared in front of Yang Kai and nodded slightly. "Young friend, please." Yang Kai sat on the chair with his hands on the armrest. He looked up at the elderly man and grinned. "What? Is this how the Fengyan auction house treats its guests? Cut the crap and cooperate with Elder Yu to verify the items. You don't look like someone with that kind of money." The young man in the front row turned his head and shouted angrily. If Yang Kai really had that kind of financial resources, he would have been invited into the private room long ago. Why would he be sitting with them? A voice rang out from the private room. "Kid, don't waste any more time. If you're really causing trouble, this seat advises you to stop and leave. At the very least, you'll still be able to maintain some semblance of dignity. If Elder Yu finds out anything, things won't be so simple anymore." Chapter 3960. Excuse me, young friend. Elder Yu slowly extended his hand and stared at Yang Kai, as if he wanted to look deep into his heart. Luo Hai's face was pale, and her fists were clenched tightly. She didn't know if Kai Yang would be able to pass the capital verification test. It was very likely that he wouldn't, but she didn't have much money on her. Otherwise she would be able to lend it to Kai Yang. Yang Kai, on the other hand, had a calm expression. Even though there was a rank 4 Kai Tian standing in front of him, he still smiled and said, "Fengyan auction house has such a rule? How come I didn't know about it?" Elder Yu frowned. Fengyan auction house didn't have such a rule in the past, because everyone abided by the rules. However, this guy didn't look like a good person, yet he still had the nerve to talk about rules. Moreover, someone from the Emperor realm dared to spout such nonsense in front of him. He couldn't help but feel a little angry. "Young friend, please cooperate." "Kid, don't talk nonsense. If you don't have money, get the hell out of here. Don't embarrass yourself here." "Hee, isn't it too late to leave now? Do you think you can leave if you dare to cause trouble here?" "Elder Yu, don't be polite with him. Just do it." In the private room, a cacophony of voices could be heard. Obviously, they all wanted the auction house to get rid of Yang Kai, so that the auction could continue. Yang Kai's eyes flashed. He mainly came to find trouble with the Fengyan auction house this time, who told them not to give him compensation, and their attitude was so bad. However, he didn't expect to incite public anger. In other people's shoes, his actions were indeed a little offensive. Therefore, although the words in the private room were a little unpleasant, Yang Kai didn't care. He just stared at Elder Yu and said, "There's no problem with the capital verification, but what if I have the financial resources?" Elder Yu frowned. "Then the auction will naturally continue. Although he said that, he didn't want to believe that Yang Kai really had the financial resources. When entering this auction house, everyone asked to show their wealth. If he was really that kind of rich person, he would have been arranged to enter a private room long ago. Most of the people sitting in this hall had a net worth of hundreds of thousands. Yang Kai said indifferently, "Feng Yin Auction House's actions are ruining my reputation. Do you think just saying that the auction will continue is enough? Then what do you want?" Old man Yu frowned. This brat in front of him was a little difficult to deal with. Yang Kai looked at him. "Don't you need to apologize for making a mistake?" Old man Yu was furious. If this wasn't an auction house, he would have taught this young man the consequences of speaking to him like this. But this was his own territory, so he couldn't attack a guest, even if this guest was only an Emperor Realm Master, who was suspected to be causing trouble. Doing so would make him look like a bully, and it would also affect the reputation of the auction house. So even though he was angry, he could only endure. Kai Yang continued, "I can cooperate with the verification. If it proves that I don't have the financial resources, then you can do whatever you want with me. If I'm lucky enough to pass, then you have to apologize." Elder Yu's eyes flashed. He pondered for a moment, then nodded and said, "Okay." Stubborn as a dead duck, do you think this old man will back down? Young people are still too inexperienced. Just as he was thinking this, a faint smile appeared on the face of the young man in front of him. "I hope Elder Yu will keep his word." Saying so, he handed over a space ring. Yang Kai's reaction was so straightforward that Elder Yu didn't expect it. He couldn't help but frown. Did this boy really have such strong financial resources? Suspiciously accepting the space ring, Old Man Yu swept its contents with his divine sense. His hand trembled, and he almost dropped the space ring. His eyes, which had been narrowed into slits, suddenly widened as a look of disbelief appeared on his face. Yang Kai couldn't believe his eyes. Inside the space ring, there was a small mountain of heaven-opening pills, one pile after another. It was simply impossible to count them all. It was impossible to count because there were just too many. Elder Yu was a 4th-grade heaven-opening master, and had been in charge of a place like Feng Yin Auction House for many years. He had never seen so much money before, but he had never seen so much. How many heaven-opening pills were there in this ring? Over 100 million was the minimum. It was very likely that there were around 200 million. No wonder this boy didn't even blink during the auction. With so many heaven-opening pills, let alone the items worth tens of thousands, even if he bought the entire auction house, it would be a drop in the ocean. Who is this guy? How could he have so much money? Moreover, he wasn't very strong, yet he dared to wander around with such a large sum of money. Although there were people from the Great War Heaven maintaining order in Star City, wasn't he afraid of some accident? His heart surged with shock. Clutching the ring, he stood there dumbly, speechless for a long time. "Elder Yu." A voice rang out from a private room. Everyone had originally planned to laugh at Yang Kai, but who would have thought that Elder Yu would have no reaction after verifying the ring? The many heaven-opening realm cultivators were all people with good eyesight, so they could naturally see the shock in Elder Yu's eyes. They didn't know what was going on. What exactly was in that ring that could make a 4th-grade heaven-opening realm cultivator lose his composure like this? Only in room A6, Pei Buan seemed to think of something and couldn't help but mutter, "This boy is quite bold." Last time, he had given Yang Kai 11 million, of which 10 million was to compensate the first in. He had originally thought that Yang Kai would definitely give it to Madame Lan, but now it seemed that the 10 million should still be in his hands. No wonder this boy was so calm and composed, not afraid of verifying the ring at all. From just now until now, the value of the items he had bid on didn't exceed 2 million. With 10 million, what was there to be afraid of? However, on second thought, he suddenly felt that something wasn't right. Even if there really was 10 million in that ring, it shouldn't be enough to make Elder Yu lose his composure like this. He suddenly remembered that he wasn't the only one who wanted to compensate the first in. There seemed to be several dozen other families, and each family wanted 10 million. Hiss. Pei Buan sucked in a cold breath. That ring couldn't possibly have hundreds of millions of heaven-opening pills, right? Although he didn't dare believe it, Looking at Elder Yu's expression, his guess should be right. How is it? Yang Kai looked at Elder Yu. Elder Yu finally came back to his senses. He looked at Yang Kai with a complicated gaze, then returned the spatial ring and nodded. Young friend, you do indeed have the right to bid. This old man was wrong, please forgive me. Yang Kai grinned. Then can the auction continue? Elder Yu nodded. His figure flickered, and he returned backstage. Only then did the auctioneer react. He raised the auction hammer and shouted, 300,000 going once, 300,000 going twice, 300,000 going thrice sold. The young man in the front row looked at Yang Kai with the corner of his eye twitching. He couldn't understand why this guy was squeezing in the hall with him when he was so rich. Suddenly, he saw Yang Kai looking at him with a faint smile. He quickly turned his head and lowered it. A person with such wealth, no matter what his cultivation was, must have a powerful backer behind him. He couldn't afford to offend him. He didn't wait for the auction to end, and found an opportunity to quietly slip away. A good auction, after being disturbed by Yang Kai, suddenly became dull. No one bid for the next few auction items. Yang Kai won all of them at once. It was as if this auction was specially set up for him, and everyone else was just there to serve as a foil. Because no one bid, the auctioneer's hammer fell very quickly. In less than half a cup of tea's time, more than a dozen fourth-grade materials were won by Yang Kai. Even Lao Bai didn't make a sound. Anyway, with Yang Kai's help, it didn't matter whether he bid or not. The next few items are the finale of this auction. If there's anything you like, please bid as much as you want. The auctioneer stood on the stage and shouted a little awkwardly. The main reason was that there was only one person's voice in the entire auction house, so it was meaningless for her to be the auctioneer. A maid came on stage and presented the auction item. The auctioneer said in a loud voice, 5th grade True Sunfire. The starting price is 1 million. Everyone feel free to bid. As soon as the auctioneer's voice fell, the lonely auction house finally had a trace of liveliness. The divine senses in the private rooms once again stretched out to check the situation. Generally speaking, the best heaven-opening materials on the market were 5th grade. 6th grade heaven-opening materials couldn't be bought with money at all, unless one was extremely lucky. Although the 4th grade materials were of interest to everyone, they could still fight for them. However, the 5th grade materials were a must-have. The 5th grade materials were highly sought after wherever they were placed. Even the Blessed Enclave couldn't meet the demand. As soon as the auctioneer's voice fell, someone shouted, 1,200,000, 1,300,000, 1,400,000. In room A6, Pei Buwen was about to bid. Suddenly he heard a familiar voice, 3 million. The words were stuck in his throat. Pei Buwen touched his head and cursed speechlessly. This guy is crazy. The normal price of a 5th grade material was 1,500,000. Even if the auction house had a little overprice, 2 million would be the highest price. Yang Kai doubled the price. How could others bid? This meant that he didn't want to play with others at all. That's enough, kid. Don't go too far. A voice sounding a little exasperated. That's right, kid. Don't you find it troublesome to bid for so many things? I think this kid is here to cause trouble. If it wasn't for the fact that Yang Kai had won all the items, everyone would have suspected that he was hired by the Feng Yun auction house. However, at this time, anyone could see that Yang Kai was here to cause trouble. However, what was the point? Although it would damage the auction house's reputation if one person bought all the items in an auction, this person would have to pay a huge price. It was equivalent to hurting the enemy, but hurting the enemy without benefiting oneself. Elder Yu, does this kid have that much money? Someone asked doubtfully. Even the auctioneer turned to look at Elder Yu. The items that were auctioned before were worth at most a few 100,000. This time, the bid was 3 million, which was 10 times the original price. It was hard for people not to be suspicious. However, Elder Yu didn't say much when he verified the price. Therefore, no one knew how much money Yang Kai had on him. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Elder Yu lowered his eyebrows and didn't move. He smiled bitterly to himself. What was a few million? That kid had close to 200 million in his ring. Chapter 3961. After Yang Kai bought the 5th grade True Sunfire for 3 million, the next 2 items, which were not inferior to the 5th grade heaven opening material, fell into Yang Kai's pocket without any suspense. The grand auction ended in a strange atmosphere. Whether it was the individual cultivator in the hall, or the shopkeepers in the private rooms, they all felt that their horizons had been broadened. They had never participated in such an auction before. Except for the first few items, the rest were basically bought by one person. And this person was from the Emperor realm. The entire auction cost more than 10 million. They were all secretly guessing. Which sect is this kid from? How could he have so many heaven-opening pills? It should be known that the funds that the shopkeepers could mobilize were only a few million. 10 million was beyond their ability to bear. There were also some people who recognized Kai Yang's identity, but there weren't many of them. After all, Kai Yang had gone to 19 shops to collect debts, and had met with 19 shopkeepers. So there were bound to be some who had come to participate in the auction. In the VIP room of the Fengyan auction house, Yang Kai and White sat across a table and tasted fragrant tea. There was a large pile of items in front of them. Even so, there were still maids coming in constantly, and putting down the items in their hands. These were the items that they had obtained in the auction before. The Fengyan auction house followed the rule of bidding first, settling the bill later. The auction had ended, so it was naturally time to settle the bill. The enchanting auctioneer stood in front of them with a smile on her face. Every time an item was brought up, she would smilingly introduce to Yang Kai what it was, and how much money Yang Kai had spent to win it. Next to her, there was another guy who looked like an accountant. He was holding an abacus, and counting the prices of the items. As maids came in and out, more and more items were placed in front of Yang Kai and White. Although White was drinking tea, he glanced at Yang Kai from time to time, feeling a little guilty. The main reason was that he had never done such a thing before. Moreover, this was the wind cloud auction, so he didn't know how to deal with this situation. After a long time, he finally settled the account. The auctioneer looked at Yang Kai with a smile. "Mister, the total price of the items you bid is 36 million. He turned to Lao Bai and said, "Mister, the total price of your items is 930,000. Compared to Yang Kai, Lao Bai didn't bid much. He only bid for some random items. The main reason was that every time Yang Kai bid, he didn't have many chances to bid. Pack them all up. Yang Kai didn't even raise his head. Hearing this, the auctioneer gestured to the side, and the staff immediately put everything into a space ring one by one. The auctioneer then handed it over to Yang Kai with both hands. Yang Kai took the ring without even looking at it. With a twist of his finger, a faint trace of space laws appeared, and the ring disappeared. Immediately after, Yang Kai stood up and called out to Lao Bai, "Let's go." The smile on the auctioneer's face froze. He flashed in front of Yang Kai and said politely, "Mister, did you forget something?" Yang Kai looked left and right, then raised his head and said, "I didn't forget anything." The auctioneer squeezed out a smile and said softly, "You forgot to pay the bill." As she spoke, her face was filled with hidden bitterness. "I don't have money." Yang Kai looked at him with incomparable honesty. Behind him, the corners of Lao Bai's mouth twitched. The auctioneer blinked her big eyes, then suddenly covered her mouth and chuckled. "Mister really likes to joke. Earlier, old man, you had asked him to verify the funds. If he didn't have the financial resources, how could he have allowed him to keep bidding? At this time, who would believe him if he said he didn't have money? I'm not joking." Yang Kai looked at her indifferently. "Your Fengyan auction house already owes me and my brother 10 million. Take these auction items as collateral. When you pay back the 10 million, I'll give them to you." The auctioneer was stunned. She stared blankly at Yang Kai and asked hesitantly, "Mister, what do you mean?" She was only an auctioneer of the Fengyan auction house, so she didn't know what had happened before. Therefore, she was confused at this time. She thought, when did the Fengyan auction house owe someone 10 million? What do I mean? Your shopkeeper naturally knows, right, shopkeeper Yin? Yang Kai shouted the last sentence to the door. Although he didn't sense Yun Jinhua's aura, he thought that at this time, Yun Jinhua was most likely outside. After all, he and Lao Bai were kicked out of the auction house, then sneaked in and bid at a high price. As a shopkeeper, it was impossible for him not to know, since he knew he would definitely show up at this time. With a creak, the door was pushed open. The person who came in was not Yun Zhenhua, but Elder Yu, who had verified Yang Kai's funds. At this moment, Elder Yu's face was gloomy. With one hand behind his back and the other in front of his stomach, he stared at Yang Kai and said, "Little friend, don't make a mistake." He only knew the identity of Yang Kai and Lao Bai after the verification. After all, it was hard to imagine that someone from the Emperor realm would carry around more than 100 million. He secretly told Yun Zhenhua about this matter. Yun Zhenhua secretly came to take a look and found out that the bidders were actually 2 workers from the first inn. Moreover, these 2 people had come to ask for money before. Elder Yu immediately knew that these 2 people didn't come with good intentions. However, at that time, the auction was already in its second half. Moreover, they did have the capital to bid, so he couldn't stop them. He could only wait until the auction was over before making a decision. Now that he saw that these 2 guys didn't intend to pay, he couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. It's only right to repay one's debts. If your Fengyun auction house won't pay, then us 2 brothers can only think of a way to get some money ourselves. Yang Kai looked at Elder Yu with a smile. Elder Yu said coldly, "No one has dared to behave atrociously in my Fengyun auction house. Are you sure you want to do this?" There wasn't before, but there is now. Yang Kai wasn't afraid. Although the Fengyun auction house had a strong backer, he also had the first in behind him. In terms of backing, there was no telling who would be afraid. Moreover, the Fengyun auction house was in the wrong first, so he wasn't afraid of anything. "You have guts." Elder Yu snorted. "But just having guts isn't enough. Do you think you can still get away?" Yang Kai narrowed his eyes and said, "Then what do you want? Are you going to detain us?" Elder Yu snorted and waved his hand. "Search them." He sneered in his heart. These 2 inexperienced brats really think that they can do whatever they want just because they have the first inn's name? I'll take back the money from the auction first, then deal with them properly. At Elder Yu's order, the workers who had been standing on both sides immediately rushed forward. Lao Bai hurriedly got into a defensive posture. "If anyone dares to come over, I'll fight them to the death." Yang Kai raised his hand and pressed on Lao Bai's shoulder. "Let them search." Lao Bai turned to look at him with a puzzled expression. The 2 of them had spent more than a month collecting money from everywhere. Not only had Yang Kai taken 100 million to 200 million, but Lao Bai had also done the same. He hadn't given anything to the lady boss. Yang Kai hadn't given anything to the lady boss, because he had been beaten by the lady boss with a feather duster the last time. He went back to report the good news. As for why Lao Bai hadn't given anything to the lady boss, it was probably because he had never seen so much money before and wanted to hold on to it for a while longer. However, before coming here, Yang Kai had asked him to give him all his valuables, so Lao Bai didn't have a single heaven-opening pill on him. It could be said that he was clean. Lao Bai wasn't afraid of others searching him, but he was afraid that they would search Yang Kai's body. However, since Yang Kai had said so, even though Lao Bai didn't understand, he still relaxed. The main thing was that he couldn't beat them. This was the other party's territory. Not to mention these workers. Even Elder Yu could crush them with a single finger. There was no point in resisting. 4 workers came forward. 2 searched for Lao Bai, while the other 2 searched for Yang Kai. After a while, the workers didn't find anything. They all turned to look at Elder Yu and said, "There's nothing." "Impossible." Elder Yu's expression changed. He didn't seem to move, but he directly came in front of Yang Kai. He grabbed his shoulder with one hand and searched Yang Kai's body with the other. How could he not have anything? Not to mention that Yang Kai had shown him a space ring containing nearly 200 million heaven-opening pills. Even the auction items just now had been obtained by him not long ago. How could they have disappeared for no reason? However, after searching for a while, they really couldn't find anything. Not only that, Elder Yu even released his divine sense and carefully searched every corner of Yang Kai's body. Let alone a space ring. He couldn't find even a single heaven-opening pill, let alone the auction items. After a moment of contemplation, Elder Yu vaguely felt a fluctuation of space principles outside the door just now. which was somewhat similar to when he used the universe escape technique. His heart clenching, Elder Yu clenched his teeth and shouted, "Speak, where did you hide those things?" Elder Yu had a 4th rank heaven-opening realm cultivation, so in his anger, his hand was incredibly strong. Cracking sounds came from Yang Kai's shoulder, as if his bones were being crushed. Yang Kai's expression changed, but he endured it and didn't say anything. He coldly stared at Elder Yu and said, "I already said that you owed us money and didn't pay it back. Us brothers just wanted to find a way to get some of it. When you pay back the money, we'll return those things." "Bastard!" Elder Yu flew into a rage. Although the prices of the auction items this time were generally high, it was still a failure for the auction house. It couldn't be helped that the auction house's reputation had been completely monopolized by a single person. In the future, when people brought up this matter, they would say that there was a problem with the Feng Yun auction house's organizational ability. Otherwise, how could such a ridiculous situation have occurred? The Feng Yun auction house had stood tall for so many years and had a good reputation, so losing a little bit of reputation wasn't a big deal. Now that they had even lost their auction items, they would truly become a laughingstock. As such, in Elder Yu's anger, the might of a 4th rank heaven-opening realm cultivator filled the air, causing Yang Kai's entire body to shrink. He felt as if he was being suppressed by the entire world. The difference in their cultivations was simply too great, and now that he was in the other party's grasp, he didn't even have the strength to resist. If it weren't for his strong will, he would have immediately knelt down. Chapter 3962. You dare make a move? Lao Bai was enraged. Seeing that Yang Kai was being pressured to the point of suffocation, the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth surged in his body. He raised his hand and slapped at Elder Yu. After that move, he suddenly realized that he was no match for Elder Yu. Seeing that Yang Kai was being bullied had made him a little hot-blooded. By the time he reacted, it was already too late to stop. Scram! However, Elder Yu didn't even look at him. He just casually slapped Lao Bai's chest with his palm. With a crack, Lao Bai was sent flying with a muffled groan. He slammed into the wall, causing the entire room to shake. Yang Kai turned his head to look. He saw that Lao Bai's face was pale, and blood was spurting out of his mouth. A large part of his chest had caved in. His head was tilted to the side, and he didn't move. His expression immediately turned cold. "Old thing, you're courting death." The power in his body surged wildly. His short body suddenly straightened, and his hands flew up to form a seal. He sent a palm strike at Elder Yu. Elder Yu was shocked. It wasn't that Yang Kai's palm strike was very strong. It was just that under this palm strike, his thoughts actually paused for a moment, as if time had stopped. This brat actually knew the laws of time? Even so, his weak strength was still a weakness. Elder Yu snorted coldly and raised his palm in front of him, slowly pushing it out. With a boom, Yang Kai was also sent flying. The principles of time wrapped around Elder Yu's palm, causing his palm to change unpredictably and wither rapidly. However, it only took an instant for it to return to normal. The difference in strength was too great. Yang Kai's principles of time was easily dispelled by Elder Yu. Otherwise, how could he be unscathed? After retreating to the foot of the wall, Yang Kai let out a muffled groan. He forcefully suppressed the roiling blood in his heart and lowered his head to look at his hand. The hand that had collided with Elder Yu's palm strike couldn't help but tremble. Even the bones in his wrist were broken. Elder Yu looked over coldly. "No one dares to steal my Feng Yin auction house's things. Those who dare to do so are all dead. Try and kill us if you dare." Yang Kai was clearly in a disadvantageous situation, but he still looked down at them with his chin raised, his face full of arrogance. Elder Yu's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he coldly stared at Yang Kai. Then he turned around and flicked his sleeves. "Keep an eye on them, don't let them escape." Finished speaking, he strode away. The auctioneer looked at Yang Kai with disgust and left as well. The other workers closed the door before they left, obviously intending to put Yang Kai and Lao Bai under house arrest. Outside the door, Yun Zhenhua stroked his beard with a frown on his face. Seeing Elder Yu come out, he gestured to him, and the two of them walked side by side into a secret chamber. It didn't take long for them to enter the secret chamber. Yun Jinhua frowned and said, "You've injured them. I'm afraid that this matter won't be easy to resolve." No matter what, those two brats were still members of the First Inn. Although they were rude first, and Elder Yu wasn't wrong to teach them a lesson, they had still injured them. Thinking of that woman's craziness, Yun Jinhua felt a headache coming on. Elder Yu's anger still hadn't subsided. He coldly snorted. They were rude first, wanting to steal my Feng Yun auction house's things. So what if this old man beat them up? Yun Jinhua glanced at him and remained silent. He knew that this Elder Yu had always been proud and arrogant. Although he was only a fourth-stage heaven-opening realm cultivator, he had the ambition to devour the heavens. He couldn't be blamed for being arrogant. Elder Yu himself had the potential to become a sixth-stage heaven-opening realm cultivator. But because he had been deceived by a scoundrel, he ended up becoming a fourth-stage heaven-opening realm cultivator. Moreover, Elder Yu hadn't been in the heaven-opening realm for very long, so he probably hadn't heard of that woman's name yet. Otherwise, how could he be so fearless? However, it didn't matter. It was just two workers, so that woman wouldn't make a fuss over a small matter. However, in this case, the 10 million heaven-opening pills would probably have to be returned. Otherwise, it would be an excuse for her to make trouble for him. Thinking of this, Yun Jinhua took out a communication bead and sent a message to his subordinates, telling them to prepare 10 million heaven-opening pills. At the same time, he also sent someone to the First Inn to invite Madame Lan over to discuss how to deal with this matter. Return the money, return the money. Those two workers had disrupted the auction and made malicious bids. In the end, they had basically smashed all of the auction items into their own hands. This matter had to be properly discussed with Madame Lan. Just as Elder Bai was knocked unconscious, a young woman rushed into the First Inn. When the worker in the inn saw her, he hurriedly came over and said with a smile, "Dear customer, please come in. Are you here for a meal or a place to stay?" The woman hurriedly said, "I'm looking for your lady boss, Madame Lan." The worker looked her up and down, then said with a smile, "I'm sorry, dear customer, but the lady boss doesn't receive guests. If you have something to tell me, it's the same. I'll tell the lady boss later." It was Lord Yang who told me to come. He said that I definitely had to tell the lady boss. The woman said, "Lord Yang? Which Lord Yang?" The worker was puzzled. There were many people with the surname Yang in Star City. Yang Kai Lord Yang. The person who had rushed to the First Inn was Luo Hai. She had left when the auction ended, but Yang Kai had secretly instructed her to do something, so she had rushed to the First Inn. "Yang Kai told you to come here?" Behind the counter, the accountant who had been doing the accounts suddenly looked up at Luo Hai. Luo Hai nodded repeatedly and said, "Yes." "What's the matter? Where's that kid?" the accountant asked. Luo Hai shook her head and kept her mouth shut. Seeing this, the accountant couldn't help but laugh. This woman's strength wasn't high, and it seemed that she hadn't even condensed a Dao seal. She was a delicate and naive person. Yang Kai had told her to find the lady boss, and she had gone to find the lady boss. She hadn't even said anything when the accountant asked. Since she was someone who Yang Kai had called to deliver a letter, there must be something. The accountant said, "Take her to see the lady boss." The worker nodded. "Yes, miss, please come with me." He led the way to the backyard with Luo Hai following closely behind. Not long after, they arrived at the lady boss's room. The worker bowed and said, "Lady boss, this miss wants to see you. She said that Yang Kai had asked her to come here." "Let her in." The lady boss's voice came out. "Please." The worker gestured. Luo Hai took a deep breath and thanked the worker before pushing the door open and entering. The first thing she saw was a woman's room. It was very elegantly arranged, and a fragrant scent lingered at the tip of her nose. Turning her head, Luo Hai saw a voluptuous woman sitting on a chair in front of the dressing table. Her beautiful hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall, and her stunning face was reflected in the bronze mirror. Their eyes met, and the lady boss asked, "Where's that damn brat?" "Damn brat." Luo Hai secretly stuck out her tongue. She knew the lady boss was talking about Yang Kai, so she immediately said, "When I parted with him, He was at the Fengyan auction house. The lady boss frowned and said while combing her hair, "Why did he go there?" Suddenly, she remembered that the Fengyan auction house was also in debt, so he should have gone there to collect his debts. She also remembered that when she had just arrived in Star City, Yang Kai had not returned home one night, and when she asked him later, he said that he had spent the night in a woman's house. After sizing her up, the lady boss furrowed her brows. Although this girl could be considered pretty, it was obvious that her strength was very low. Furthermore, her expression was timid, as if she had never seen the world. Could it be that this brat had spent the night in her house? "Why did he ask you to come find me?" the lady boss asked. Luo Hai quickly stepped forward and unfolded the things she had been holding tightly in her hand. "He asked me to give you these things." The lady boss turned her head and saw 3 space rings. 3 rings, one obviously had Yang Kai's aura, one had Bai Chi's aura, and obviously belonged to these two, while the last one seemed to be ownerless. The lady boss reached out and took the rings, and with her divine sense, she first checked Yang Kai's ring, and couldn't help but raise her brow. Humph. Inside the ring, there was a large pile of heaven-opening pills, and it was clear that this brat had recently collected his debts. He had never given them to her, and she didn't know why he had asked an outsider to give them to him. She then looked at Bai Chi's ring, and it was the same, not much less than Yang Kai's. "You two little bastards, just wait and see how this old lady will deal with you when you come back." The lady boss secretly cursed in her heart and looked up at Luo Hai. "Do you know what's inside?" These 2 rings were worth 300 to 400 million heaven-opening pills, and Yang Kai had actually asked someone from the Emperor realm, who hadn't even condensed a Dao seal to send them back. Was he not afraid of any accidents? Although no one in Star City dared to do anything sneaky, it was better to be safe than sorry. Luo Hai shook her head. "I haven't seen them." The lady boss's gaze softened slightly, regardless of whether Luo Hai had seen them or not. The fact that she was able to return the rings meant that this woman was a trustworthy person. She didn't try to explain anything to Luo Hai. The difference in status and strength was too great, so she couldn't explain anything. She then looked at the 3rd ring. There was a large pile of random items, but there were also quite a few good items, which confused the lady boss. She casually handed the ring to Luo Hai and asked, "Where did he get these things?" Luo Hai took a look and covered her mouth as she said, "These are the things that were just auctioned off at the auction house." She also didn't know why these things would appear here. She simply followed Yang Kai's instructions and left first, before finding a secluded place to wait silently. Before she left, Yang Kai gave her a bead and told her that something would be delivered to her later. She was to go to the first inn and hand it to the lady boss. Not long after, the bead flashed and 3 space rings appeared in front of Yang Kai. "He participated in the auction?" The lady boss was startled. Luo Hai nodded and said, "Lord Yang basically won everything." "This bastard." The lady boss suddenly stood up and was about to curse him when she suddenly seemed to remember something, and her expression changed dramatically as she cried out, "Not good." Taking back the space rings from Luo Hai's hand, her figure flickered and she rushed out, not even bothering to comb her hair carefully. Luo Hai stood dumbfounded in place, completely dumbfounded, but she still hurriedly followed after her. But where was the lady boss? The cashier behind the counter looked out in surprise and asked one of the shop assistants, "Why is the lady boss in such a hurry?" The shop assistant shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Seeing Luo Hai come out, the cashier hurriedly called out to her and asked her a few questions. Hearing this, the cashier's expression also changed dramatically, faintly feeling that things had become a little troublesome. Chapter 3963. In the side room of the Tempest auction house, the 2 of them grimaced in pain. Both of them were injured and in extreme pain, so they naturally weren't happy. Comparatively speaking, Lao Bai's injuries were more serious. His chest was slightly sunken, his internal organs were damaged, and there were traces of blood at the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, Yang Kai only had a broken hand. However, these injuries weren't too serious for the 2 of them, and they only needed to rest for a few days to recover. Lao Bai sat cross-legged and was about to circulate his energy to heal his injuries when Yang Kai pulled him up. Don't heal your injuries. What are you doing? Cold sweat broke out on Lao Bai's forehead. He didn't understand why Yang Kai stopped him at this time. Yang Kai held his broken hand and looked at him. Guess what the Tempest auction house is doing now? How would I know? Lao Bai said angrily. How could he be in the mood to guess when Yang Kai didn't heal his injuries? He'd never been put under house arrest before. And it was the first time today. It was simply a great humiliation, and rage surged in his heart. Don't you have a brain? Yang Kai tapped his head. It's such a simple matter. Just think about it, and you'll understand. Lao Bai couldn't help but raise his head and glare at Yang Kai. However, he suddenly thought of something and cried out in a low voice. Oh no, I'm afraid we'll alarm the lady boss. After all, he and Yang Kai were the attendants of the first inn. Even though the Tempest auction house had a good reason to injure and put them under house arrest, they would definitely notify the lady boss and let her come over to deal with it. Instantly, he had a vexed expression inside. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have done that. He didn't want to alarm the lady boss. After all, it was just a trivial matter. If he didn't come over, it would be because he was incapable. If the lady boss was disturbed, it would be because of his incompetence, and it would be quite embarrassing. When he raised his head and saw Yang Kai's spurious smile, he frowned. You did it on purpose. Now that he thought about it, Yang Kai had maliciously bid against him in the auction house, and basically got all the auction items. In the end, he didn't pay and wanted to leave. How could he leave? The situation was bound to develop to its current state. In the end, the Wind Cloud auction house would definitely invite the lady boss over. At that time, Shifeng had thought that Yang Kai had some brilliant idea. Yang Kai chuckled. Did you just understand? Lao Bai was a little confused. Didn't you say not to alarm the lady boss? Yang Kai shook his head slowly. That was then, and that was then. Previously, even if Feng Yun had invited the lady boss over, it might not have worked. If Feng Yun auction house was determined to renege on their debt, would the lady boss still be able to snatch it from them? In the beginning, she said that if you cooperate, you can just pay up. If you don't cooperate, she will have to go to the headquarters of some forces to talk. I don't know where Feng Yun blessed land is, but it's definitely not too close. Why bother lady boss to make this trip? Then now, as Senior White spoke, his eyes lit up, and he faintly understood Yang Kai's plan. Yang Kai also grinned sinisterly. Now that you and I have been seriously injured and don't have much time left, the lady boss will naturally have an excuse and reason to make trouble. If we want to appease the lady boss's anger, what is a trivial debt of 10 million? Seriously injured and don't have much time left. The corners of Senior White's mouth twitched when he heard this. Looking at Yang Kai, it was as if he was seeing him for the first time. This little brat was too treacherous. You and I can easily get back the 10 million by suffering some physical pain, so it's worth it. When the time comes, we might even be able to casually ask the Wind Cloud auction house for some compensation. Not only was he treacherous, but his heart was also black. Senior White thought to himself as he said, You should have said so earlier. I thought you were going to grab those auction items and run away. Yang Kai looked at him speechlessly. There are 2 4th-stage Heaven Opening Realm Masters guarding this place. How can you and I escape with our insignificant strength? It wasn't that there was no chance. Since he could deliver the 3 space rings to Luo Hai, he could naturally escape with Senior White in an instant. However, the monk could run away, but the temple couldn't. The first inn still had to open, so if he really ran away with Senior White, then all of his previous efforts would be for naught. If I'm not wrong, Yun Zhenhua should have already sent someone to invite. Before Yang Kai could finish his sentence, he heard a familiar voice. Yun Zhenhua, come out and see me. The 2 of them stared at each other and saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. The lady boss is here so quickly? Almost at the same time, the 2 brothers fell to the ground. Senior White's tongue was hanging out like a dead dog, his aura suddenly weak. Yang Kai casually slapped himself a few times, causing him to spit out 3 liters of blood. He looked very miserable. In the other room, Yun Zhenhua and Elder Yu, who were sitting at a table across from each other, were also astonished. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Madame Lan to arrive so quickly. The servant who had gone to deliver the letter had only just left. However, no matter what, it was fine as long as she was here. They had to properly explain today's matter to her, so that she could carefully discipline her subordinates in the future. After exchanging a glance, the two stood up at the same time and walked out. No matter what, this person was a 6th-stage heaven-opening realm master. Not someone the two of them could casually offend. They had to give enough face. Unexpectedly, before the two of them had even taken a few steps, a tremendous pressure descended from the sky. The cold murderous intent was so dense that it seemed tangible, causing the entire Feng Yun auction house to tremble. Yun Jinhua's hair stood on end, feeling his scalp go numb. Elder Yu's expression also became extremely solemn. Although he tried his best to resist, his bones still creaked under the pressure. The two of them did not understand why this Madame Lan had suddenly launched an attack. Although the tone of her previous words was not very polite, a 6th-level splitter of the heavens had the qualifications to do so, so it was understandable for her to speak like that. What was the meaning of suddenly using her aura to oppress others? Did she really think that Feng Yun auction house was afraid of her? Both Yun Zhenhua and Elder Yu were somewhat angry. Did she really think that Feng Yun auction house was a place where she could behave atrociously? At this moment, a few screams suddenly came from somewhere in the backyard, followed by a crashing sound. It seemed that the door of a room had been blasted apart. Yun Zhenhua turned his head to look at Elder Yu and shouted, "Let's go!" The two of them immediately walked towards the backyard, and soon arrived at the place where the incident had occurred. It was the room where Yang Kai and Lao Bai were imprisoned. At this moment, they saw that in the courtyard, there were people lying haphazardly on the ground. They were all the attendants of Feng Yun auction house who had been arranged here to guard Yang Kai and Lao Bai. Wails rang out incessantly, all of them beaten up miserably. Needless to say, the person who had attacked was Madame Lan. In front of a 6th-stage heaven-opening realm master. How could these ants have any power to resist? The two of them were furious. No matter what, this was the Feng Yun auction house. Even if Madame Lan was a 6th-stage heaven-opening realm master, she couldn't injure so many of them as soon as she arrived. Moreover, these people's injuries weren't light, and they would need at least a year to recover. In a flash, the two of them arrived in front of the smashed door. Looking inside, they saw a graceful back facing them in the room, squatting on the ground to check the injuries of the two detestable brats. "Lady boss," Lao Bai gasped for breath, spitting out large mouthfuls of blood as he spoke. I'm afraid I won't make it. Lao Bai will remember the care you've given me all these years. I'll repay you in my next life." The lady boss squatted in front of him, her black hair hanging down and covering her eyes, so they couldn't see her expression. However, Yang Kai and Lao Bai could clearly hear the sound of her secretly gritting her teeth. "Shut up." The lady boss raised her hand and pinched Lao Bai's chin with a little force. Under Lao Bai's incredulous gaze, she directly knocked him out. However, the lady boss slowly turned her head to look at Yang Kai, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a faint smile. "You two are really good." Yang Kai laughed dryly, not knowing what to say. The lady boss was also furious. When Luo Hai hurriedly reported to her, she vaguely guessed what had happened and immediately rushed over. Originally, she wanted to discuss with Yun Zhenhua how to resolve this matter, but when she arrived, she discovered that Yang Kai and Lao Bai were imprisoned here, and their breathing was weak. In her fury, she couldn't care less and directly charged in. When she saw the two of them, she realized that she had been fooled. The two brats' breathing was weak, and their injuries were also real, but it wasn't as serious as she thought. They would naturally recover after a few days of recuperation. She actually thought that they were really beaten up badly. She secretly sighed in relief. Fortunately, it wasn't that serious. After speaking, the lady boss slowly stood up with her eyes downcast, and a cold aura emanated from her body, causing the surrounding temperature to plummet. Yang Kai couldn't help but shiver. "Who injured them?" As she asked, she slowly turned around and swept her cold gaze over Yun Zhenhua and Elder Yu. Being stared at like this, both Yun Zhenhua and Elder Yu couldn't help but feel a prickling sensation, as if something extremely bad was about to happen. Yun Zhenhua suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and frowned. Madame Lan, is it? If you have something to say, we can talk it out. He had only heard of this woman's crazy reputation, but had never seen her in person. He felt that this beautiful woman in front of him was very different from what he had heard. Who hurt them? The lady boss ignored him and repeated the question again. The coldness in her eyes became even colder. Yun Zhenhua was furious. In any case, he was the head shopkeeper of Feng Yun Blessed Land. Although Madame Lan had an extraordinary background, she shouldn't be so arrogant, right? Elder Yu coldly snorted. Two brats who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth dared to cause trouble at the Feng Yun auction house. Not taking their lives is already this old man's. Ha! He shouted the last word with all his might, and a force visible to the naked eye shot forward. It couldn't be helped. In his field of vision, the woman in white was wrapped in a baleful aura, as if a peerless monster had been born. She sent a palm strike towards him. She actually dared to attack him? Old Man Yu was both shocked and furious. Although he had injured Yang Kai and Bai Qi before, and Madame Lan had also beaten up a group of shop assistants when she arrived, it wasn't a big deal. Those were just servants. But two heaven-opening realm masters fighting in Star City was different. How could the people of the Great War Heavens turn a blind eye to this? Was this woman crazy? A thought flashed through Elder Yu's mind. Chapter 3964. Before he could finish his thought, Madame Lan of the First and had already shattered his divine technique and pressed her palm against his chest. Elder Yu's expression changed drastically. He knew that he was no match for her. After all, she was a 6th-level heaven splitter, and he was only a 4th-level heaven splitter. He immediately retreated, and at the same time, the shadow of the mini-universe world appeared behind him. The aura of the world force suddenly filled the air, and the shadow of the mini-universe world disappeared in a flash. The lady boss followed like a shadow, her beautiful eyes cold. Old Man Yu only felt his neck tighten, and all the strength in his body came to a halt. By the time he reacted, his whole body had already been lifted up, a soft whip wrapped around his neck. Madame Lan was standing just 3 feet in front of him, the source of the whip in her hand. The cold air around her was thick. How was this possible? Elder Yu's eyes widened, and his heart was filled with shock. He knew that he was no match for Madame Lan, and the difference between their grades of heaven splitter was obvious. However, he never thought that she would be so strong. He thought that even if he couldn't defeat Madame Lan, he could at least hold on for a while. At that time, shopkeeper Yin would naturally come to help. As long as the aftermath of the battle here spread out, the people of the Great War Heavens would naturally come out. As long as the people of the Great War Heavens showed up, this fight wouldn't happen, and everyone could sit down and have a good talk. However, in the face of absolute strength, this illusion was shattered. This was a 6th-level heaven splitter? Even a high-grade heaven splitter couldn't be more powerful, right? Although Elder Yu was a 4th-level heaven splitter, he had seen high-grade heaven splitters in action before. He could vaguely feel that this Madame Lan's strength wasn't something that a 6th-level heaven splitter could compare to. On the side, Yun Zhenhua's expression changed drastically, and he shouted, "Madame Lan, please show mercy." It wasn't that his reaction was slow, but that the lady boss was too fast. She captured Elder Yu in a breath's time, and he didn't even have time to help. Seeing Elder Yu being strangled by the soft whip and suspended in midair, he couldn't help but be shocked and angry. On the other side, Kai Yang, who was holding his broken hand, was also dumbfounded. 3 parts of his blood was boiling, and 3 parts of his jaw dropped. Oh my god, isn't the lady boss a bit too fierce? She actually dared to fight in this star market, not giving any face to the Fengyan auction house. What if the people of the Great War Heavens? After all, this Star City was de Zhantian's property. However, it had to be said that this scene was quite satisfying. It was a pity that Lao Bai had fainted, otherwise, he would definitely call him over to watch it together. How many ribs are broken? The lady boss suddenly asked. Everyone was a little confused, not knowing what she was asking. How many ribs are broken? The lady boss turned her head and looked at Yang Kai. Only then did Yang Kai realize that she was talking to him. He quickly said, 3 sticks. The lady boss nodded lightly. Suddenly, she struck out with her palm, which landed squarely on Elder Yu's chest. Elder Yu immediately let out a blood-curdling scream as he flew backwards, blood spurting from his mouth. Cracking sounds could be heard from his chest. Yun Jinhua's eyes narrowed as he rushed over to support Old Man Yu. The two of them stood side by side as they glared at Old Man Yu. The lady boss flicked her sleeves, and the soft whip in her hand shrank back like a snake, disappearing without a trace. With an indifferent expression she said, "You broke 3 of my men's ribs, so I'll break 3 of yours. It's very fair." Elder Yu gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. Yun Jinhua's eyes were also about to pop out of their sockets. Yang Kai stood behind her, and couldn't help but shrink his neck. He was the one who broke the ribs just now, and Elder Yu only fractured the bones in his hand. This matter seemed to have gotten out of hand. "Now we can talk properly." The lady boss raised her smooth chin. Her slender body was like a majestic mountain, blocking in front of Yang Kai, as if she could block out all the storms. These words were undoubtedly in response to Yun Jinhua. Just now, when the lady boss was inspecting Yang Kai and Old Bai's injuries, Yun Jinhua had said that they could talk properly. Unfortunately, the lady boss didn't care at all. She first captured Elder Yu, who had injured them, and then broke 3 of his ribs. Only then did she give them a chance to talk. What else was there to talk about? Elder Yu had never suffered such humiliation in his life. At this moment, the blood in his heart was boiling like a volcano that was about to erupt. If it weren't for the fact that he was weaker, he would have already pounced forward to take revenge. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, but he ignored it. In his eyes, there was only the woman in white, and his hatred was etched into his bones. Yun Jinhua also didn't say a word. He didn't expect this Madame Lan to be even more unreasonable than the rumors. Moreover, she didn't give him any face at all. His mouth was filled with bitterness as he stuffed it into his mouth. He had already sent a message to the headquarters to inquire about the destruction of the first inn, and it was confirmed that there was indeed an expert from his clan who acted in the first inn. The destruction of the first inn was indeed related to his clan. However, that person didn't have a good relationship with him. Although they were both from Feng Yun blessed land, they didn't see eye to eye with each other. Why did he have to pay for the trouble caused by someone else? He oversaw the Feng Yun auction house, and as the shopkeeper of this place, the annual income would more or less become his capital to climb up the ranks. 10 million heaven-opening pills wasn't a small amount, and if he didn't have 10 million, then he would have worked for nothing this year. Therefore, he flatly refused Yang Kai and Bai Qi, and didn't intend to clean up after them at all. He thought that even if Madame Lan came personally, he would ignore her. After all, he wasn't the one who acted in the first inn, and Madame Lan couldn't possibly force him to pay for it. Later, he would just let Madame Lan go to the headquarters to find the person who acted. Who would have thought that it would lead to such a disaster? Elder Yu was a proud and arrogant person. He had already thought of paying for the damages and settling the matter peacefully, but he still underestimated Madame Lan. "It's fine if you don't say anything. Yang Kai, you tell me." Madame Lan didn't even turn her head, her voice cold. Yang Kai clutched his chest and sorted out his words. He then told her about how he met Bai Qi on the street, heard Lao Bai's complaint, came here with Lao Bai to see Yun Jinhua, and even Yun Jinhua's response. After the lady boss heard this, she coldly snorted. "Shopkeeper Yun, you open the door to do business, and you pay attention to integrity. What's the meaning of this debt?" Yun Jinhua gritted his teeth, but still didn't say a word. He really wanted to say that he didn't know money, but it was meaningless to say this in front of this crazy woman. It would only give her an excuse to make trouble. "Continue," the lady boss said. "If the other party didn't want to pay back the money, why did you participate in this auction, and even bid for so many things?" Yang Kai said embarrassedly. In reply to Lady Boss, this humble one was thinking that if the other party didn't want to pay back the money, we brothers wouldn't be able to report back. Our fists aren't as big as the other party, and we can't beat them in a fight, so we might as well get some auction items. That's why. Because of this, Yang Kai also felt a little uneasy that his mistake had caused so much trouble. His original intention was to use this matter to create an excuse for the lady boss to make trouble for them. But who knew that the lady boss would make such a big deal out of this? It was really unexpected, and now he was afraid that this matter wouldn't end so easily. He didn't know if the lady boss would blame him later. Very good. It's rare for you to think of such a method. The lady boss turned around and gave him a smile. If it were me, I would do the same. Yang Kai was instantly dumbfounded. Yun Jinhua finally couldn't take it anymore. Madam Lan, is this how you indulge your subordinates? Indulge? The lady boss looked at him coldly. It's only right and proper to repay a debt. What indulgence? Besides, this lady's subordinates aren't people that can be hurt by any random person. Random person? Yang Kai's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, and he almost couldn't help but cover the lady boss's mouth. Only now did he realize that this woman's mouth was really hateful. Saying these words, wasn't it the same as slapping other people's faces? Sure enough, when the lady boss finished speaking, Elder Yu and Yun Jinhua's expressions changed. They were both fourth-stage heaven splitters. And although they couldn't be considered top-notch experts in this universe, they were still quite famous since they were born in Feng Yun-blessed land. When had they ever been called random people? This was a great humiliation, a great humiliation. Yun Jinhua was still forcefully suppressing his anger, but Elder Yu was already trembling all over, and his eyes were bloodshot. He looked like he couldn't wait to fight the lady boss to the death. You want to fight? This lady is more than willing to accompany you. What's the point of bullying children? Just sign a life and death contract, and go to the Azura arena. I just don't know if you have the guts to do so. The lady boss spat venom. As soon as she finished speaking, Elder Yu spat out a mouthful of blood, and his aura weakened greatly. It was obvious that he was about to die from anger. Yun Jinhua gritted his teeth and said, Forget it, Madam Lan. My Feng Yin auction house admits defeat this time. You can take these two away. If he allowed this woman to make a scene here, he was really afraid that Elder Yu wouldn't be able to control himself and accept her challenge. At that time, wouldn't he be sending himself to his death? Dying in the Azura arena would be a meaningless death, and he wouldn't even have an excuse to take revenge. I will naturally take them away. But where is the money your Feng Yin auction house owes me? The lady boss looked at Yun Jinhua coldly. Yun Jinhua gritted his teeth and threw out a spatial ring. He already knew that he couldn't keep the 10 million, so he had someone prepare it beforehand. It just so happened that it came in handy at this time. The lady boss caught it without even looking at it. She believed that Yun Jinhua wouldn't do anything to the 10 million. Seeing that the lady boss had accepted the money, Yun Jinhua said, The money has been paid, and you've injured them. You should leave the things behind, right? You're talking about this? The lady boss reached out and took out another spatial ring. With a shake of her hand, a large pile of items appeared in front of everyone. They were the items from the previous auction. Why were they in her hands? Yun Jinhua didn't understand. He thought that Yang Kai had hidden these things somewhere. Yang Kai, they injured you. Although I've collected some interest, this isn't the end of it. You can take anything you want. Just treat it as shopkeeper Yun's compensation to you and old Bai. Although the lady boss was speaking to Yang Kai, her pair of cold eyes were fixed on Yun Jinhua. The latter's face twitched upon hearing this, but he didn't dare to speak again. This woman was really, as the rumors said, a madwoman, a completely unreasonable madwoman. His heart was filled with regret. If he had known this would happen, he would have just accepted the 10 million. None of this would have happened. Chapter 3965. Asking for compensation. Kai Yang could be considered to have witnessed the lady boss's ability to pester others endlessly. He was speechless in his heart, but at this time he naturally couldn't let the lady boss lose face. So he immediately stepped forward and pulled out 10 bottles from the pile of auction items. He took out 10 bottles of Great Dao pills. He was thinking that Luo Hai had helped him this time, and she just happened to be lacking these pills. It wouldn't be a bad idea to take some back and give it to her to help her condense her Dao seal. As a member of the First Inn, you should at least be a little more capable. Just as Yang Kai was about to stand up The lady boss's words entered his ears. Yang Kai's mouth twitched. How could he not understand the meaning behind her words? Was she saying that he was a good-for-nothing for taking such a small amount of things? Gritting his teeth, he reached out and took the Grand Sun True Fire. Yun Jinhua's heart bled as he watched from the side. This was one of the final items of the auction, and its value was close to 2 million heaven-opening pills. This crazy woman was too much. Unfortunately, his strength was not as good as hers, and he had witnessed her madness with his own eyes. So he didn't dare to say anything. Since the lady boss didn't say anything, Yang Kai couldn't just stop. After taking the Grand Sun True Fire, he went to take the other 2 final items. Don't go too far. Just show some appreciation. The lady boss finally spoke. Yang Kai secretly sighed and hurriedly returned to the lady boss's side. Not far away, Yun Jinhua almost vomited blood. The 3 most valuable items of the entire auction were taken away. Wasn't this too much? Although the 3 items were few, their value was almost half of the auction price. Why didn't you take away the rest as well? Manager Yun, you don't seem to be convinced. The lady boss looked at Yun Jinhua indifferently. Yun Jinhua gritted his teeth and said, Madam Lan, we will meet again. Feng Yun blessed land will remember today's gift. When we meet again in the future, I hope Madam Lan can still be so high-spirited. Humph. The lady boss snorted coldly. You don't have the qualifications to represent Feng Yun blessed land. With a flick of her sleeve she shouted, Let's go. Yang Kai hurriedly ran back and carried the unconscious Lao Bai on his shoulders. He raised his head and puffed out his chest as he followed behind the lady boss and strode away. Behind him, 2 pairs of burning eyes stared at him like leeches. A long time after the lady boss had left, Elder Yu suddenly spat out another mouthful of blood. Brother Yu. Yun Jinhua's expression changed as he hurriedly asked Yu Zhenghai to sit down. Are you all right? Old man Yu waved his hand. His expression changed, as if he had aged several hundred years in an instant. He let out a low chuckle. I've really learned a thing or two today. Suddenly, his expression turned ferocious as he gritted his teeth. This matter isn't over yet. Yun Jinghua nodded and said, Of course it's not over yet. We must make that woman pay the price. I will report everything that happened today to the headquarters. And when the time comes, the headquarters will send someone to seek justice from her. Elder Yu faintly nodded and frowned. Brother Yin, why is that woman so tyrannical? It's not like I've never seen a high-level splitting the heavens cultivator fight before. She's just a 6th level splitting the heavens cultivator. It seems a bit too strong. Yin Jinhua sighed. Brother Yu, you don't know this, but that crazy woman had a very high chance of reaching high-level splitting the heavens back then. However, because she was in a hurry to advance, she had no choice but to reach 6th level. Although 6th level is only mid-level splitting the heavens, her foundation is still there. Under high-level splitting the heavens, almost no one is her match. What made her give up the chance to reach high-level splitting the heavens? Elder Yu was stunned. Even though the 6th rank was only 1 step away from the upper rank, to a martial artist, this 1 step was like a heavenly moat. If it wasn't for the fact that they had no other choice, why would they give up on such a bright future? Although that woman had a chance to advance further in the future, that would require countless flowing time Great Emperor and endless energy. Moreover, different cultivators would have different degrees of improvement in the future. Yin Jinhua slowly shook his head. I'm not too sure about this. It seems to be for a man. Humph. Elder Yu coldly snorted. Love is long, and the heroic spirit is short. It was unknown what he thought of, but his expression suddenly became gloomy. Seeing this, Yun Jinhua knew that Elder Yu's heart had been touched. Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. Elder Yu himself also had a chance to reach 6th level splitting the heavens back then. But because of love, he was forced to reach 4th level. From this point of view, he was somewhat similar to Madame Lan. Yang Kai carried Old White and silently followed behind the lady boss, attracting the attention of many passers-by. The lady boss didn't say a word, and Yang Kai didn't know what to say, feeling somewhat guilty. Today, he had seen the lady boss's awe-inspiring power, but he hadn't expected the matter to blow up so big. He felt somewhat guilty, wondering if he had brought any trouble to the lady boss. A figure approached from the front. It was Luo Hai. Seeing Yang Kai in a miserable state and Old White unconscious, Luo Hai was shocked. She covered her mouth and asked, "Lord Yang, are you all right?" Yang Kai shook his head. "I'm fine. Thank you very much this time." If it weren't for Luo Hai's report, the lady boss wouldn't have come so quickly. Luo Hai said, "I didn't do anything. It's just a small matter." As the two of them spoke, the lady boss had already walked further and further away. Seeing that she had no intention of stopping, Yang Kai hurriedly said, "Take these things. I'll look for you later." After saying this, he directly stuffed 3 bottles into Luo Hai's hands and jogged to catch up with the lady boss. After Yang Kai disappeared, Luo Hai lowered her head to look at the 3 jade bottles in her hands. She opened the bottle caps and immediately cried out in surprise. Inside these bottles were the great Dao pills that she had always dreamed of. Each bottle contained 2 pills, so there were 6 pills in 3 bottles. This was one of the items that had been auctioned previously. Looking up gratefully, Luo Hai secretly gritted her teeth. She would definitely remember this kindness in her heart. In the future, she would do anything for him. On the way back to the first inn, the accountant and the cook came out to welcome them. Seeing the miserable state of Yang Kai and Old White, they were filled with righteous indignation and clamored to avenge the 2 brothers. Yang Kai was afraid of them. The lady boss had just made a big fuss and even took back her capital and interest. If they were to talk about losses, it was the Feng Yun auction house that had suffered a great loss. At this time, he didn't dare to let them add fuel to the fire. He hurriedly persuaded them and finally dispelled their thoughts. "Take Old White over. Are you too blind?" The lady boss turned her head and glared at the accountant and the cook. The accountant shuddered and hurriedly went forward to take the unconscious Old White. "Rest well for the next few days. It's more important to heal your injuries first." The lady boss turned around and reminded Yang Kai. It was the first time that he had seen her speak to him so amiably. Yang Kai was not used to it, but he still agreed. "I'm tired." The lady boss yawned and walked toward the backyard. She was so charming that countless diners in the hall couldn't help but stare at her. Only then did Yang Kai notice that the lady boss's hair was not combed and just draped over her shoulders. Only after the lady boss's figure disappeared did the quiet lobby suddenly burst into a clamor. Yang Kai grimaced and said, "I'm going back to rest too." After this big fuss, he was also very tired. In the following days, Yang Kai finally experienced what it meant to live like a prince. Every day, the cook personally sent over many nourishing and blood-nourishing foods. They were all very nutritious. In addition to the cook's excellent cooking skills, Yang Kai ate every meal clean. In the cook's words, it was like being licked by a dog. After eating for several days, Yang Kai was so nourished that his qi and blood were surging. In the end, he really did not want to eat anymore. The cook said that the lady boss had ordered them to watch him finish eating. Not only him, but Old White also did the same. There was no other choice but to finish the food. With these nutritious foods and his own recovery ability, Yang Kai was fully recovered in a few days. Although Old White was not as good, it would not take long for him to fully recover. He did not need to go out to run errands. This was the benefit of the injured. The 2 brothers had nothing to do all day. After going through such a trial together, their relationship improved a lot. From time to time, they would get together to chat and fart. Old Bai was a little worried, because he had never seen the lady boss show so much concern for any of the workers in all these years. He was always a little suspicious, wondering if the lady boss was going to give them a bowl of candied dates first, and then wait until their injuries were healed, before giving them a beating with a club. He was on tenterhooks all day. He could not even taste the food that the cook sent over. Yang Kai did not think much of it at first, but after hearing Old White's words, he also felt a little uneasy. All their debts were collected. Although the Feng Yin auction house incident was a secret, the truth could not be hidden forever. They did not know how the news leaked out, but half of the shopkeepers in Star City knew that the lady boss of the first and went to the Feng Yin auction house to collect debts. Not only did she injure the shopkeeper, but she also extorted a lot of things. Who could sit still after hearing this? Those who still owed money personally sent 10 million to the first inn, afraid that the lady boss would visit them one day when she was in a bad mood. Including the money that Yang Kai and Old Bai had taken back, all of the forces that had attacked the first hotel had to pay 10 million gold coins. Yang Kai's debt was reduced by 10 million because of this. Now he only owed the lady boss 6 million. On this day, Yang Kai was in his room inspecting the map of the universe, when he suddenly heard the lady boss calling him. He could not help but grit his teeth and get out of bed. He came to the lady boss's room and knocked on the door. A languid voice immediately came from inside the room. "Come in." Yang Kai pushed the door open and entered. His face twitched slightly. He saw the lady boss lying on the incense bed with her hand supporting her forehead. Her face was languid. He did not know what kind of incense was lit in the room, but it was faintly condensing and refreshing. "Lady boss." Yang Kai walked over and lowered his head. The lady boss did not look at him. She raised her hand and waved, and something flew towards Yang Kai. Kai Yang took a look and was overjoyed. This thing was his shadowless muslin. Not long after he had come here, the lady boss had taken it from him. After more than a month, he had finally returned it. When the lady boss took it away, she did not say what she wanted it for. She only asked him to keep it for a while. How could Yang Kai dare to disagree? Chapter 3966. After more than a month, Yang Kai picked up the shadowless veil and raised his brow. "Lady boss, this thing." He vaguely felt that the shadowless muslin was somewhat different from before, but he couldn't pinpoint exactly what was different. The lady boss lazily replied, "I asked someone to help you refine it and improve the mysteries of this artifact, but it has already been fixed, so the degree of improvement isn't very great." "Refine?" Yang Kai's heart trembled. He had experienced many of the wonders of this shadowless muslin, and knew it was an extremely good artifact. For such a thing to continue being refined, it was obvious that the person who refined it was extremely skilled in artifact refining. Although the lady boss's identity was extraordinary, asking such a person to help him would likely come at a price. Why was this woman so good to him? Yang Kai was puzzled. If she had stood up for him and Old White a few days ago, because of the first inn's reputation, then there was no way to explain the shadowless muslin. Holding on to the shadowless muslin, Yang Kai cautiously asked, "How much is it?" Just borrowing 7 surfaces had cost him 5 million. The cost of refining the shadowless muslin was probably not small. Was the lady boss going to put the bill on him again? How long would it take for him to pay back the money he owed? Hearing this, the lady boss opened her eyes slightly, stared at him for a while, and then closed them again. What does this mean? Yang Kai was confused by her words, but since she didn't say how much it cost, Yang Kai was too lazy to continue asking. In any case, he would just pretend he hadn't spent any money and happily asked, "So now it can avoid the detection of a mid-rank splitter the heavens?" "In your dreams?" The lady boss sneered. "What kind of improvement is that?" Yang Kai was stunned. The shadowless muslin could not avoid the detection of a mid-rank splitter the heavens before. But if the other party was not careful enough, they would have overlooked it. This was the case back in the Golden Crow Divine Palace. Yuan Xiaoman and the other 4th-rank splitters were all focused on exploring the Golden Crow Divine Palace, and failed to discover him. The lady boss said unhurriedly, "I've already said that the improvement is limited. Under the same conditions, the middle-ranked splitter the heavens had a 70% chance of seeing through illusions, but now it's only 40% or 30%. Yang Kai nodded, still smiling. This was not bad. The chances of being seen through had decreased a lot. It was indeed an improvement. It could save his life at a critical moment. "Thank you, lady boss." Yang Kai thanked her sincerely. "Do you have any other orders?" The lady boss climbed onto the bed and rested her hands on her chin. Her legs were long and slender, and her hips were round and firm. Her graceful curves formed a soul-stirring arc at her waist. She lazily said, "My shoulders are a little sore." Did she want him to massage her shoulders? Yang Kai blinked. However, when he looked over, the scene in front of him was really captivating. Yang Kai suddenly felt that his throat was a little dry. He scratched his face and said, This isn't good, right? It was one thing for a man and a woman to be alone in a room. But if they were to touch each other, who knew what other people would think if they saw them? The lady boss didn't say anything. Yang Kai stood in place and hesitated for a long time. Then he made up his mind and walked over. He sat on the edge of the bed and raised his hand to massage the lady boss's shoulder. She wasn't afraid, so what was he afraid of? He took it as a sign of thanks. Thinking this way, his mood became a lot more relaxed. He didn't feel like he was being restrained. He gently massaged. He couldn't feel anything through the layer of clothes. The lady boss's eyes were closed, so he couldn't see her expression. However, Yang Kai could clearly feel that her body was very relaxed. They didn't say anything for a while. Time slowly passed. I want to eat snowy sky fronds. The lady boss suddenly said faintly. What? Yang Kai was in a daze and didn't hear clearly. When he reacted, his expression changed greatly. Snowy sky fronds? He had learned from his mistakes. Last time, when he brought snowy sky fronds back from the 9 Serenities continent, she dragged him to her room to drink with her. In the end, both of them were drunk. When they woke up, they were severely taught a lesson by Lao Bai and the others. They were even almost chopped in half by Chef with a kitchen knife. All kinds of past events were vivid in Yang Kai's mind. He had an instinctive feeling of repulsion towards snowy sky fronds. According to Lao Bai and the others, every time the lady boss ate snowy sky fronds, she would be depressed for a long time. She would even get drunk. Yang Kai didn't know why she suddenly wanted to eat snowy sky fronds at this time. The corner of his mouth twitched. He forced a smile and said, Eat what? There's no snowy sky fronds here. I want to eat. The lady boss turned her head and stared at him. Yang Kai chuckled and said, Even if I want to eat it, I can't. That thing is a specialty of the 9 Serenities continent. It can't be sold anywhere else. The lady boss didn't answer. She only looked at him quietly with a pair of expressive eyes. Yang Kai ignored her. As he pinched, he suddenly frowned. Don't tell me. You want me to make a trip to the 9 Serenities continent. The 9 Serenities continent was located in the large territory where the first inn was originally located. It was extremely far away from here. The last time he rushed over, it took him half a year. Now, even with the help of the Heaven and Earth escape, it would take him at least 1 to 2 months to make a round trip. The lady boss blinked, which was her answer. Wishful thinking. Yang Kai was furious. She wanted him to go so far to pick fruits for her on a whim. She was going too far. Are you going or not? The lady boss glared at him. I'm not going. Yang Kai replied resolutely. You're really not going? The lady boss supported her head with her hand and half straightened her body. Not unless you kill me. Yang Kai snorted. As soon as he finished speaking, a strong force came from his waist, and he was kicked to the ground. Lan Yurua. Yang Kai got up and glared at the lady boss. Don't go too far. It was fine if she wanted him to pinch her breasts, but now she wanted him to go to the 9 Serenities continent. Did she really think he was her assistant? The lady boss blinked her big eyes. How do you know this name? She had never told Yang Kai her name. White and the others were not people who gossiped. After asking, they realized that it should be a shopkeeper in Star City who told him. Why? Can't you let others know your name? Yang Kai patted his butt and snorted. I'm going out now. If you want to eat snowy skyline, go to the 9 Serenities continent yourself. After saying that, he strode out and closed the door with a bang. Standing outside the door, Yang Kai was blown by the night wind, and his anger gradually subsided. Thinking that his reaction just now was a bit too intense, he couldn't help but think of the last time when he and White were imprisoned in the Fengyan auction house. The lady boss came aggressively to stand up for them. How awe-inspiring she was. Her tyrannical aura made the 2 level 4 sky splitters unable to breathe. In the end, they could only grit their teeth and admit defeat. Although he didn't know what the lady boss had to pay, it was definitely not without a price. Looking up at the night sky, Yang Kai cursed angrily and soared into the sky. Damn it! In the room, the lady boss clenched her silver teeth. After half an hour, Yang Kai's figure appeared outside Star City's Lingzhou. In the vast universe, there was no one around. Yang Kai formed a series of hand seals and silently activated the Heaven and Earth Escape seal. Not long after, a faint connection emerged in his mind. It was a sign that he was connected to the Heaven and Earth Palace in this large territory. An inexplicable array suddenly appeared under his feet and slowly rotated. The fluctuations of the law of space spread out. With Yang Kai's actions, the array rotated faster and faster. After a dozen breaths of time, it suddenly hummed, and a ball of light enveloped Yang Kai. When the light dissipated, Yang Kai had disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in an unfamiliar large hall. Within the large hall, there were a total of 10 to 20 large formations carved and set up. They did not look very different from each other. The large formations were extremely similar to the formation that had appeared beneath his feet before, and he was at the center of one of the large formations. In the other large arrays, flashes of light would appear from time to time. Every time a light flashed, a person would appear here. Heaven and Earth Palace. It was Yang Kai's first time using the Heaven and Earth Escape technique. He felt it was very novel. Previously, he had wanted to test the mysteries of the Heaven and Earth Escape technique, but unfortunately, he hadn't found the opportunity. Now it seemed that although the Heaven and Earth Escape technique was amazing, its drawbacks were too great. With his current strength, it took him a dozen breaths of time to be teleported here. In a life and death battle, a dozen breaths was enough time for the opponent to kill you hundreds or thousands of times. He was proficient in the law of space. What if it was another cultivator with the same strength as him? It would take more time, and the aftereffects would not be small. At this moment, Yang Kai felt a little dizzy. After all, the distance he had crossed was too great, and it was difficult for him to bear. The cultivator that appeared on the other large arrays was even more exaggerated. They stood there with their eyes closed, their faces pale and sweating. The lower their strength, the more obvious this was. Even though there were drawbacks, the universe escape technique had an enormous benefit, and that was its universality. So long as one cultivated the universe escape technique and left one's own brand in the various universe halls, then one would be able to freely travel back and forth, saving a great deal of time on the way. After resting for a while, Yang Kai didn't want to appear too abrupt. When it was about time, Yang Kai walked down from the large array. He didn't stay in this Heaven and Earth Palace for long. Taking out the Heaven and Earth scroll and determining his position and route, Yang Kai directly left. After leaving the Heaven and Earth Palace, he flew for less than half a day before arriving at the territory gate that led to another large territory. Staring at the huge territory gate that stretched across the void, Yang Kai felt a little troubled. The pressure that had to be endured to pass through the territory gate was enormous. If one's strength was not enough, it was very likely that they would be torn to pieces by the tyrannical power of the void. Old White had said before that a medium-grade splitter the heavens could rely on one's own strength to forcibly pass through the territory gate without worrying about being injured. However, a medium-grade splitter the heavens and below would have to buy a flight-type artifact and use the power of the artifact to resist the tearing force of the territory gate. Yang Kai had rushed out in a hot-blooded manner, but he had forgotten about this. He only discovered this when he arrived. What should he do? Should he go back home? Or should he wait here and see if there was anyone who could give him a lift? At this moment, going back home was not a big deal. The lady boss should not know that he had run out, so it was not embarrassing. If he waited here, who knew how long he would have to wait? Chapter 3967. However, since he was already here, Yang Kai was not willing to go back with his tail between his legs. It was not as if he had never passed through a territory gate before. Last time, when he brought Dai Yu and the others out of the Qiqiao land, they had passed through several territory gates in succession. Ah Sun's white jade fox had run out of energy, and Yang Kai had relied on himself to withstand the pressure. Thinking back, Yang Kai faintly felt that it should not be a problem for him to pass through. After all, he was proficient in the law of space, and the strength of his body was not something an ordinary cultivator could compare to. Thinking of this, Yang Kai no longer hesitated. He took a deep breath and walked towards the huge territory gate. A huge suction force came from the territory gate, and the more he tried to resist, the more powerless he felt. Yang Kai frowned and simply stopped resisting, allowing the suction force to pull him into the territory gate. His vision blurred as he charged into the territory gate. An incomparably terrifying tearing force assaulted him from all directions. There was also a wave of unbearable dizziness, causing him to lose his sense of direction. All the bones in his body were making cracking noises. Yang Kai did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly urged the law of space, secretly combining it with the fluctuating law of space in the territory gate. Immediately, the pressure was reduced, and he was delighted. He knew that his guess was right. The law of space could indeed reduce the risk. With this, he was more confident in passing through the territory gate. Calming his chi, Yang Kai allowed his body to drift, protected by the law of space. After an unknown amount of time, the suction force around him suddenly disappeared, and his body became much lighter. He regained control of his body. Looking around, Yang Kai couldn't help grinning. This should be another large territory gate. In other words, he had succeeded in passing through the territory gate. However, with just a slight movement, he felt incomparable pain all over his body. Looking down, he was shocked to see that his body was covered in small wounds, and his blood had dyed his entire body golden. His clothes were in tatters. For a moment, he felt a pang in his heart. He knew that Lao Bai was right. Only a mid-level splitter heaven cultivator could forcefully pass through this territory gate. No one below mid-level splitter heaven cultivator had the ability to do so. In other words, not only was his body formidable, but he was also able to utilize the spatial laws to reduce the pressure he faced. Otherwise, he would absolutely be unable to accomplish such a feat. He didn't pay too much attention to them. They were all superficial wounds that would heal after a few days of rest. He changed into a clean set of clothes, took out the map of the world, and identified his location. Then he walked in a certain direction. Along the way, Yang Kai casually threw a space spirit bead out. Ever since he came to this world, there was one thing he wanted to test, and that was the limit of the effective range of his space spirit bead. Although the space spirit bead was powerful and had the same effect as the Qingquan escape technique, its effective range was not unlimited. Yang Kai was well aware of this, but he had yet to find out where its limits were. He hadn't had the chance before, so he could use this opportunity to test it out. After a few days, Yang Kai held a space spirit bead in his hand, a contemplative look on his face. During this period of time, he had thrown out a few space spirit beads. After several tests, he discovered that the maximum effective range of the space spirit bead was about 2 days of flying at full speed. Any further, and the space spirit bead would not be able to sense him. Since it couldn't sense him, it naturally wouldn't be effective. 2 days of flying at full speed wasn't considered short. In that case, the space spirit bead's teleportation distance couldn't compare to the Qingquan escape technique. At the very least, as long as he was in a large territory, the Qingquan escape technique would be effective. This was not surprising. The foundation of the Qingquan escape technique was the Qingquan Palace. There was the Qingquan escape seal in the palace, and there were many large formations supporting it. It made sense that its effective range was greater than the space spirit bead. A few days later, a familiar world appeared in front of Yang Kai, the 9th underworld continent. Just like last time, he broke through the shackles of the world barrier and rushed into this mini-universe world. In an instant, Yang Kai felt the telepathic thoughts of the great emperors in this place sweep over him. Immediately after, an old man appeared in front of him out of thin air. He bowed slightly, a look of surprise on his face. Special Envoy Yang? The old man was the sect master of Tianshan Baozitong. He was also the one who welcomed Yang Kai the last time he came. Sect Master Bao. Yang Kai cupped his hands in greeting. Baozitong asked curiously, Special Envoy Yang, why are you here? Does Madame Lan have any orders? Yang Kai sighed. She doesn't have any orders. The lady boss is hungry and wants to eat the snowy skyline again. She asked me to come and pick some for her. Bao Zitong was shocked. Madam wants to eat it again. Is there a problem? Yang Kai looked at him in confusion. Bao Zitong waved his hand. No problem, no problem. Special Envoy Yang, please come with me. He was curious why Madame Lan wanted the snowy skyline again so soon. In the past, Madame Lan didn't want it even once every 10 or 20 years. She would only ask someone to pick it when she passed by this place. However, only half a year had passed since the last time. Although he was curious, he couldn't ask too much. He apologized and went forward to grab Yang Kai's arm. He called for a woman and ordered her to pick some for the snowy skyline. Bao Zitong was about to invite Yang Kai to sit down when Yang Kai said, "Let's go together." Bao Zitong nodded. Sure. The three of them set off and flew towards a certain part of Heavenly Mountain. It didn't take long for them to arrive at a valley. The valley wasn't large and was surrounded by mountains. However, when Yang Kai arrived, he could clearly feel that there were strong cultivators guarding this place. Although they weren't at the level of the great emperors, they were at the limit of this world. In addition, there were layers of formations set up inside and outside the valley. It was obvious that Heavenly Mountain attached great importance to this place. In the valley, there were about 50 to 60 small trees that were as tall as two people. Yang Kai had never seen those trees before, but the fruits hanging on the trees were very familiar. They were the size of a baby's fist and were reddish-black in color. They were the snowy skyline. Yang Kai had eaten this fruit before. It was bitter and astringent. Although it was a spirit fruit, in Yang Kai's opinion, it didn't have much value. At most, it was suitable for cultivator below the Saint King realm. In other words, the grade of this spirit fruit was very low. Naturally, Yang Kai didn't need to personally pick the fruits. The Heavenly Mountain women would pick the fruits that were about the same size. Bao Zitong accompanied Yang Kai as they shuttled through the fruit forest. Sect leader Bao, there's something I don't understand. I'd like to ask you to enlighten me. Yang Kai stopped under a fruit tree and suddenly spoke. Bao Zitong replied, "Please speak, Special Envoy Yang." This snowy skyline. Yang Kai pointed at the fruit tree and said, "Does it have any special meaning to the lady boss?" He vaguely sensed it last time, but he didn't ask too much. Bao Zitong looked around and reminisced. To be honest, Special Envoy Yang, the fruit trees here were planted by the lady herself. Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. The lady boss planted them? He suddenly realized something. Could it be that the lady boss was born in the Nine Serenities continent? If she wasn't born here, why would she plant fruit trees here? Yes. Bao Zitong nodded slightly, a hint of pride appearing on his face. The lady was once the 43rd sect leader of Heavenly Mountain. Yang Kai understood now. No wonder the lady boss was so fond of the snowy skyline. It was because of homesickness. However, on second thought, this wasn't right. If she was really homesick, shouldn't she come back to Heavenly Mountain to take a look? However, the lady boss didn't come back at all when the ship stopped in the void last time. She only asked him to come here and pick some fruits. Sect leader Bao, is there anything special between the snowy skyline and the lady boss? Yang Kai asked again. This time, Bao Zitong didn't answer. He only shook his head and said, "It's not my place to interfere with the lady's matters. If Special Envoy Yang wants to know, you can ask the lady." He paused and said, "However, Special Envoy Yang, I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if I should say it." "Please speak, Sect Leader Bao," Bao Zitong said. This Bao earnestly hopes that Special Envoy Yang can take good care of the lady. Yang Kai couldn't help but laugh. The lady boss is a 6th grade heaven-opening realm master, so she's very impressive. I'm just a little venerable sovereign. How can I take care of her? On the other hand, the lady boss takes good care of us. Bao Zitong smiled and didn't say anything else. The two of them walked forward for a while. Yang Kai said, "Sect leader Bao, I want to take a fruit tree with me. Is there a problem?" Bao Zitong pondered for a moment. "Sure. There are dozens of fruit trees here. I don't think the lady will blame me for taking one." Yang Kai thanked him and immediately got to work. It wasn't difficult, and he finished it in a short while. This time, the lady boss had gone crazy and made him come to the Nine Serenities continent to pick the snowy skyline. If she went crazy again next time, wouldn't he have to come here again? He would transplant one into his own medicine garden first. After all, it shouldn't be difficult to cultivate this thing. He would let the two little wood spirits handle it later. With their abilities, they would be able to harvest dozens or hundreds of trees in less than 1 or 2 days. At that time, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. When he was done here, the snowy skyline was almost finished. The heavenly mountain woman came over with a basket of spirit fruits and handed it to Yang Kai. After declining Bao Zitong's invitation to stay, Yang Kai immediately set off and rushed back. It took him more than 20 days to come here, and about the same time to go back. This round trip took him 1.5 months. When Yang Kai hurried back to the first inn, he was stopped by Old Bai. With an anxious look on his face, Old Bai whispered, "You dare to come back? Where have you been all this time?" "The lady boss ordered me to go out and do something," Yang Kai replied. "What are you talking about?" Lao Bai glared at him. "The lady boss was very angry when she couldn't find you. If he really went out to do something for the lady boss, how could the lady boss not know? Hurry up and leave. Don't ever come back again. If the lady boss finds out," Lao Bai said as he pushed Yang Kai out. Suddenly his expression froze. He bared his teeth and said, "It's too late." The lady boss's voice sounded in his mind. Obviously, she had discovered Yang Kai's presence. Yang Kai didn't have the energy to say anything else. He walked straight into the inn. "I'm going to see her." Lao Bai couldn't stop him. He exchanged a glance with the accountant. When he thought about the lady boss's terrifying state, he couldn't help but shiver. Chapter 3968. When he arrived at the lady boss's room, Yang Kai knocked on the door. A cold voice immediately came from inside the room. "Get in here." Yang Kai shrunk his neck. He knew that Lao Bai was not lying. The lady boss did not seem to be in a good mood. Even her tone sounded very creepy. However, he was on a mission, so he was not afraid of anything. He immediately pushed the door open and entered. "Lady boss, I'm back." Inside the room, the lady boss was sitting on a chair. She glanced at him with a cold expression. Hearing him, she laughed. "You still have the guts to come back? You still have the nerve to come back?" She slammed the table and shouted angrily, "Why don't you die outside? Didn't you ask me to pick the snow sky front line?" Now that she was saying such things again, Yang Kai felt a burst of anger in his heart. Clenching his fists, he was about to argue back, but then he remembered how she had rushed to the storm auction house to save him and Old Bai. Forcefully suppressing the anger in his heart, he stepped forward without saying a word. "Lady boss, I've brought back what you wanted." "What I wanted? What did I want?" The lady boss clenched her teeth. She looked like she wanted to bite off a piece of Yang Kai's flesh. As soon as she finished speaking, her small mouth opened slightly. She stared blankly at a bamboo basket on the table. The bamboo basket was filled with red and black fruits the size of a baby's fist. They smelled very fresh, as if they had just been picked. "The snow sky front line?" The lady boss was shocked. Her anger disappeared in an instant. She said in a daze, "Where did you get it?" Yang Kai sneered. "Where else could I get it?" The lady boss suddenly stood up and said in shock, "You went to the 9 Serenities continent?" Yang Kai said in annoyance, "Nonsense, this is a specialty of the 9 Serenities continent. Where else could I go?" "You disappeared for a while because you went to the 9 Serenities continent." The lady boss still could not believe it. Her eyes were wide open. "Where else did you think I went?" Yang Kai glanced at her and was surprised to find that the lady boss had a look of guilt and fear in her eyes. He couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment. He didn't know what she was afraid of. "How did you get to the 9 Underworlds continent?" asked the lady boss. "How else can we go? It's just..." Yang Kai paused, suddenly realizing that there was no way to explain this. He didn't have a flight-type artifact that could resist the tearing force of the territory gates. So how could he pass through them? If he were to tell the lady boss that he used his physical body to travel through space, she probably wouldn't believe him. So he decided not to tell her more. He waved his hand and said, "If you want to eat it, then eat it quickly. It won't be fresh if it's left for too long. I'm going to rest first." He cupped his hands and turned around to leave. Just as he lifted his foot, his collar was suddenly grabbed by someone. He turned his head and saw that the lady boss was standing behind him, grabbing his clothes. "What?" Hey, why are you taking off my clothes? Yang Kai's face was filled with panic. The lady boss had directly grabbed him and thrown him onto the bed, one hand holding him down while the other undid his clothes. What was wrong with this woman? He wanted to resist, but in the hands of a 6th-grade heaven splitter, he couldn't even summon the slightest bit of strength. So how could he resist? After a few seconds, his clothes were undone. Have you gone crazy? Yang Kai shouted angrily, his eyes spitting fire. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. How could a woman force a man onto the bed and strip him? He angrily glared at her, only to see the lady boss staring blankly at her exposed chest and waist. Then, she stretched out a hand and gently touched them. Her touch was warm and tugging at his heartstrings. Yang Kai couldn't help but groan, his resistance instantly becoming less firm. Suddenly he hissed again. It was the lady boss who had touched his wounds, causing him a burst of pain. Although his physical body was incomparably strong, and he had used the space principles to reduce the risk, when he passed through the territory gate, every time he passed through, he would be riddled with scars. They weren't serious injuries, just that they looked quite miserable. After a few days of recuperation, he would naturally recover. He had rushed back without stopping, and directly came to see the lady boss. His injuries hadn't healed yet. You forcibly passed through the territory gate? The lady boss looked at Yang Kai in disbelief. Yang Kai pushed her away, and stood up to put on his clothes. He snorted. What else could I do? Are you crazy? The lady boss shouted. Don't you know that this is very dangerous? In case. Weren't you the one who asked me to go? Yang Kai tidied his messy clothes and didn't even raise his head. The lady boss was suddenly at a loss for words. She did ask Yang Kai to go to the 9 Serenities continent to pick some snow, but she didn't ask him to forcibly pass through the territory gate. If Yang Kai had agreed, she would have found him a flight-type artifact to protect himself. However, Yang Kai didn't agree at that time, and went back by himself. She thought that Yang Kai had left in a fit of anger, so she was very angry these days. Lady boss, do you have any other instructions? If not, I'll go and rest first. It's quite tiring to travel all the way here. Yang Kai cupped his hands and asked. Seeing that she was just staring blankly at him without any reaction, he couldn't be bothered with her anymore. He nodded and turned to leave. Opening the door, Yang Kai paused for a moment. In the courtyard, the accountant was holding his golden abacus and making a crackling sound. Lao Bai and the chef were together, looking dignified as they muttered something. The chef nodded from time to time. These 3 bored fellows. Yang Kai snorted, turned around, closed the door and strode away. Halfway, Lao Bai caught up with him. He didn't say much, but solemnly reminded him, don't bother the lady boss for 3 days or you'll suffer. Yang Kai nodded seriously. What happened last time was still fresh in his mind. How could he make the same mistake again? He secretly made up his mind. Even if the lady boss called him, he would definitely not go. After returning to his room, he sat down and rested, conserving his energy. The past month of travel was really tiring. Yang Kai didn't want to think about anything else now. He just wanted to have a good sleep first. The night passed without a word. The next day, Yang Kai came out early and busied himself with the first inn with Lao Bai and the others. The first inn's business was very good. Since noon, it was full of guests. Yang Kai also made a sound of oh, but his heart was alarmed. This crazy woman was smiling at him. What was she smiling at? Wipe the floor and tidy up. What do you think you look like? The lady boss said to Lao Bai. Lao Bai kept nodding his head like a chicken pecking at rice. The lady boss turned around again, and reached out to touch her hair. In a low voice, she asked Kai Yang and the accountant. Won't this hairpin look too young on me? Not young, not young. The accountant quickly said. Lady boss is so young. It's just right for you. He punched Yang Kai in the arm. Yang Kai also came back to his senses. Yes, it's just right. Chapter 3969. You're the only ones who know how to make people happy. The lady boss chuckled, and turned to walk towards the inner courtyard. It was not until her figure disappeared that the quiet lobby became noisy again. What's going on? Yang Kai stared at the accountant, but the accountant was confused. Didn't they say that the lady boss would be depressed for a long time every time she ate the snowy skyline? Why was she so different this time? Did you see that? Did you see that? The lady boss put on that hairpin. Lao Bai didn't care about wiping the floor anymore. He leaned over and whispered. His face was full of horror, and no one knew what he was thinking. How could he not see that the lady boss had purposely held the silver-gilded phoenix hairpin and asked for Yang Kai and the accountant's opinion? What's wrong with the hairpin? Yang Kai had just joined the first and not long ago, so he was confused. That hairpin? The accountant frowned and said, it was given to the lady boss by a very important person. The lady boss hasn't worn it for a long time. And the lady boss's attitude today is not right. Lao Bai stared in the direction of the backyard. There must be a reason for this abnormality. The accountant clicked his tongue. So should I go or not? Yang Kai asked. Just now, the lady boss had called him over and said that she had something to tell him. He had made up his mind not to go to the lady boss for the next 3 days, but now he was in a dilemma. Go, go, go. Lao Bai grabbed his arm and pushed him towards the inner courtyard. The lady boss summoned you. How can you not go? Nothing will happen, right? Yang Kai was worried. He didn't want to be drunk by the lady boss again. He didn't want the same thing to happen again. Stop talking nonsense. Go. Lao Bai said impatiently. Yang Kai had no choice but to bite the bullet and go to the inner courtyard. After he left, Lao Bai returned to the counter and looked at Yang Kai's figure. He sighed and said, it's been so many years. It's time to come out. The accountant lowered his eyes and said, it's not easy to come out of a blood feud, but it's not bad to have something to rely on. By the way, have you investigated Yang Kai's background? Don't let anything happen in the end. Lao Bai said, how can I not know when I'm personally involved? He has only been in the trichiliocosm for a short while, so he doesn't need to investigate much. Moreover, this fellow's personality is very much to my liking. He doesn't seem like someone from that side. That's good. The accountant heaved a sigh of relief. If you fall in the same place twice, Lady Boss won't be able to get up again. The two looked at each other and sighed heavily. In the boudoir, the proprietress was sitting upright. After Yang Kai came in, he was a little worried. Fortunately, there was no smell of alcohol in the room, and there were no messy fruit pits. It seemed that the proprietress did not drink last night. This is for you. Go back and refine it. The lady boss didn't say anything else. She directly handed Yang Kai a spindle-shaped object. Yang Kai took it and raised his eyebrows. Territory shuttle? He had seen this thing before. Previously, when he was in the Star Market, he had gone to many shops and seen many things to buy and sell in the Star Market. This territory shuttle was one of them. As the name implied, this thing was a secret treasure specially used to travel through the territory gate. The 100 Refinements Hall sold it, and it seemed that according to the quality, it was divided into several grades. The lowest grade started at 100,000, and then there were hundreds of thousands, millions, and even millions. The better the quality, the more expensive it was. Of course, it could be used for a longer time. The lowest grade territory shuttle could only withstand 3 to 5 shuttles. Any more, and it would not be able to withstand the pressure of shuttling through the territory gate. If it was forcefully used, it would only shatter. The highest grade territory gate could be used indefinitely, and there was no risk of it being damaged. Of course, the price was also high. Yang Kai didn't know what grade the item the proprietress gave him was, but the proprietress definitely wouldn't be too bad. It's good that you recognize it. The proprietress smiled. Actually, last time, forget it. Don't casually travel through the territory gate in the future. You haven't opened the heavens yet, so it's very dangerous. Refine this, and if you want to travel through the territory gate in the future, you can use it. This was indeed something he needed, so Yang Kai didn't bother with pleasantries and nodded. Thank you, proprietress. The proprietress sneered. What are you thanking me for? You are my shop's employee, so I naturally have to consider your safety. All right, if there's nothing else, you can go back to work. Saying so, she waved her hand. Yang Kai cupped his fists and left, but after walking a few steps, He suddenly remembered something and turned around. Proprietress, is our shop still short of people? The proprietress looked up at him. What's wrong? It's like this, if the shop is still short of people, I want to recommend someone to come over. That person has helped me a lot. But because her strength isn't high, life in the star market is very difficult for her. The proprietress pondered for a moment before asking, the woman you called last time? Yes, that's her. Yang Kai nodded. Her name is Luo Hai, and she was born in the star market. She has never joined any forces. So if proprietress is still worried, you can go and inquire about her background. No need, you can go and talk to her. If she is willing, let her come over. It's just a matter of one more person. The proprietress agreed so readily that it was beyond Yang Kai's expectations, so he immediately thanked her. Returning to the lobby, Lao Bai immediately greeted him and looked at him worriedly. Is everything all right? I'm fine, I'm going out. Yang Kai put the white towel on his shoulder into Lao Bai's hand and strode out. Last time, he had stayed in Luo Hai's house, so Yang Kai vaguely remembered the location. He went all the way to the outermost area of the star market, and finally found Luo Hai's house among the messy buildings. But he found that there was no one home. Fortunately, he still had a way to contact Luo Hai, so he immediately took out his communication bead and sent a message to her. After a short while, Luo Hai replied, asking him to wait for a moment, and she would come back soon. After waiting for less than half an hour, Luo Hai hurriedly appeared, and after seeing Yang Kai, she asked in surprise, Lord Yang, why are you here? After the incident at the Fengyan auction house, she had not seen Yang Kai again, nor had Yang Kai contacted her. Originally, she thought that Yang Kai had forgotten about her, but who knew that after more than a month, Yang Kai actually came to find her. Yang Kai smiled slightly and said, What's wrong? Can't I come? Luo Hai hurriedly waved her hand and said, That's not what I meant. It's just that a few days ago, I went to the first inn to look for you, but they said that you were missing. Yang Kai laughed and said, It's just a misunderstanding. His face suddenly turned cold, and he said in surprise, You've condensed your Dao seal? Compared to the last time they met, although Luo Hai was still in the Emperor realm, there was clearly an aura of Dao circulating around her body, which meant that she had successfully condensed her Dao seal and could look forward to reaching the heaven-opening realm. Luo Hai said, I have to thank Lord Yang for the great Dao pill, otherwise, I don't know when I would have been able to condense my Dao seal. A few days ago, she went to the first inn to find Yang Kai to thank him, but who knew that when she arrived, she heard that Yang Kai had inexplicably disappeared. The lady boss of the first inn was very angry because of this, and she was so scared that she hurriedly left. Although she had been paying more attention to Yang Kai recently, she found nothing. It's nothing. Yang Kai waved his hand. The great Dao pill was something he had casually brought back from the auction house, and he had no use for it. He had originally intended to give it to Luo Hai. You don't have to call me master, just call me Big Brother Yang. Thinking that they would be working together at the first inn in the future, he had to change this address. Otherwise it would be awkward. How can I? Luo Hai waved her hand again and again. Just as Kai Yang was about to say something, he heard a sarcastic voice from not far away. I was wondering why a cheap slut like you would suddenly abandon this young master. So it turns out you ran off to meet with your lover. You don't put this young master in your eyes at all. As soon as this remark came out, Luo Hai's face changed. Yang Kai also couldn't help but frown. Looking in the direction of the voice, he saw that not far away, a group of 3 people were walking over. The leader was a young man with a fair complexion. He was dressed in luxurious clothes and had an extraordinary bearing. At a glance, one could tell that he came from a wealthy background. Behind him was a middle-aged man and an old man, who seemed to be his guards. Yang Kai noticed these 3 people when they came over, but he didn't expect them to be looking for Luo Hai. Looking at the 3 people, Yang Kai's expression changed slightly. The young man in the lead was just a Dao Source Realm cultivator, who wasn't even an Emperor Realm master. Yang Kai didn't know how poor his aptitude was, but it was surprising that he only had such a weak cultivation outside the universe. The middle-aged man and the old man behind him had deep auras, indicating that they were two heaven-opening realm cultivators. From what Yang Kai could tell, the auras of these two were no weaker than Wei Kei of Great Moon Province. In other words, they were two third-order heaven-opening realm cultivators. What was the background of this guy? He was just a Dao Source realm cultivator. Yet he had brought two third-order heaven-opening realm guards with him. Moreover, he even knew Luo Hai. Yang Kai was a little confused. Cheap slave. This young master paid you so you could serve this young master well, not come here to flirt with your lover. Tell me, how should we settle this account? The young man looked extraordinary and dignified, but when he opened his mouth was full of venom. He didn't even look at Yang Kai, only staring at Luo Hai as he shouted. Luo Hai trembled and hurriedly explained, "Young Master Hai, you misunderstand. I am an old acquaintance of this Lord Yang. He came to find me for some reason. This mistress didn't mean to abandon young master. This mistress apologizes to young master here. Please forgive her." Young Master Hai glanced sideways at Yang Kai and coldly snorted. "What bullshit, Lord Yang, pig master? A trivial piece of trash dares to call himself master in front of this young master? You really don't know what you're talking about." Yang Kai was immediately unhappy. He hadn't provoked anyone, and this was the first time he had met this young Master Hai, yet he was being called trash. His face immediately sank as he said, "Friend, can we talk things out? If you don't know how to speak properly, I can teach you on behalf of your master." Young Master Hai sneered. "Friend? Who's your friend? A piece of trash like you dares to talk nonsense in front of this young master." The two third-order heaven-opening realm cultivators behind him also glared at Yang Kai coldly, the pressure of their heaven-opening realm slowly spreading out from their bodies. Chapter 3970. Where did this mad dog come from? Yang Kai turned his head to look at Luo Hai. Luo Hai replied, "I don't know where this young Master Hai came from, but it seems his background is not small. This is the first time he came to Star City, so he asked me to be his guide." Yang Kai nodded, thinking that this young Master Hai was familiar with Luo Hai, but it turned out that he was just a customer. Just like last time, he didn't know much about Star City, so he found someone familiar to guide him. No wonder this guy had said something about abandoning him as soon as he appeared. It seemed that he had implicated Luo Hai. He had sent a message to her, and Luo Hai should have hurried back, causing this young Master Hai to feel indignant and chase after her to see what was going on. As for the other party's background, Yang Kai could see that this young Master Hai's background was not small. Otherwise, how could he have two third-stage heaven splitters guarding him? Not in the mood to argue with him, Yang Kai simply said, "Young Master Hai, is it? Miss Luo has other important matters to attend to, so it is inconvenient for her to be your guide. You should find someone else." Young Master Hai sneered. "You think it's inconvenient? Did you ask for this young master's opinion?" Yang Kai narrowed his eyes slightly. "Then what opinion do you have?" Young Master Hai sneered. "You took this young master's money, but you want to get away without serving this young master well? How could it be so simple? How much did he pay you?" Yang Kai turned to Luo Hai and asked. Luo Hai lowered her head and said, 3 spirit pills." Yang Kai nodded and raised his hand, tossing 3 heaven splitter pills over. "Young Master Hai, these are 3 heaven splitter pills. Now that I've paid you back, we don't owe each other anything." Whether it was young Master Hai or the 2 third-stage heaven splitters, none of them took the heaven splitter pills, not even glancing at them, letting them fall to the ground. Young Master Hai chuckled. "Heaven splitter pills? This young master can have as many as he wants. Even this young master usually feeds his dog more than 3 pills a day. Do you think this young master cares about this?" Yang Kai frowned and said, "There are countless directional derivatives in this Star City. Young Master Hai can find them anywhere, so why be so aggressive?" "So what if I like to be aggressive?" Hai Gongzi looked at Yang Kai arrogantly. "Get lost if you don't want to die. This is none of your business. If you want to die, I don't mind sending you on your way. Then what will it take for you to give up?" Yang Kai was disgusted. Although he loathed young Master Hai's domineering and arrogant personality, he had 2 third-grade heaven splitters with him. So he really did have the capital to be arrogant. Make her accompany me obediently for a day and a night, and this young master will pretend that this never happened. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences. Young Master Hai pointed at Luo Hai. Once he said that, Luo Hai's body trembled. How could she not know Mr. Hai's intentions? Her face immediately turned pale. The reason she had rushed back so quickly after receiving Yang Kai's message was that when she was acting as young Master Hai's guide, this guy had been harboring ill intentions towards her, causing Luo Hai to feel very insecure. As such, after receiving Yang Kai's message, she had immediately apologized and returned the 3 heaven splitter pills as a reward before rushing back. She hadn't expected this guy to chase her all the way here and not let her off so easily. Yang Kai's face also became cold. Observing the situation, young Master Hai couldn't help feeling smug. 2 insignificant pieces of trash daring to oppose this young master. I'll let you know what the consequences will be. Luo Hai was obviously someone who lived at the lowest rung of society. She had no backing or strength, so even if such a person was killed, no one would stand up for her. The young man next to her didn't seem to have any kind of background either. He was dressed like a manservant, and it was impossible to tell where he was from. Although young Master Hai was a little interested in Luo Hai, it wasn't like he had to get his hands on her. He had an extraordinary background, not to mention Luo Hai, who had only condensed a Dao seal from the Emperor realm. Even some low-rank heaven splitters would willingly crawl into his bed, strip naked, and let him taste them. So, although he was just a Dao Source realm cultivator, he had played with no less than a dozen heaven splitter realm women. It was just that he was accustomed to others obeying his every command. So suddenly one day, someone disobeying his wishes naturally made him very angry. Yang Kai's eyes were downcast, and his face was gloomy, causing young Master Hai to mistakenly think that Yang Kai was afraid. He immediately snorted coldly. Boy, if you know what's good for you, scram. This young master can't be bothered with trash like you. Saying so, he pointed at Luo Hai and said, Take this cheap slut down. As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man on his left stepped forward. Luo Hai was so scared that she trembled all over, her face drained of blood. Just as she was considering whether to run or beg for mercy, a figure flashed in front of her and blocked her path. Yang Kai looked up and shouted coldly, Who dares to make a move? Take her down. Young Master Hai shouted angrily. The middle-aged man didn't pay attention to Yang Kai at all, and stretched out his hand to grab Luo Hai. Although Yang Kai was in front of her, Luo Hai still felt her vision go dark at this moment, as if all the light had been blocked. We are Madame Lan's people in the first inn. Try it. Yang Kai shouted. The middle-aged man's hand paused, and his calm expression finally changed as he asked in surprise. The first inn, Madame Lan? Before he could finish speaking, Yang Kai suddenly turned around and grabbed Luo Hai's wrist, and in a flash, the 2 of them disappeared. What a treacherous boy. The middle-aged man was furious. How could he not know that he had been fooled? This boy had only shouted those words to frighten him, so that he could escape. Get out here. At this moment, the elderly man who had been standing next to young Master Hai suddenly punched the air, and a fierce fist chi erupted. In the air, 2 figures suddenly appeared. It was Yang Kai and Luo Hai, who had just disappeared. Being hit by the shockwave, Yang Kai and Luo Hai both spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered to the ground. Yang Kai's face was filled with horror and disbelief. These guys actually dared to fight in Star City? Star City was under the jurisdiction of the Great War Heavens, and private fighting was strictly prohibited here. Old White had told him this before he came. Last time, when the lady boss fought in the Fengyan auction house, the Great War Heavens people were not alarmed, because the Fengyan auction house itself was isolated from the outside world by a restriction, and the fight was short, so the fluctuations did not spread out. The Fengyan auction house felt embarrassed, and would not expose the matter. There were no restrictions here. If the Great War Heavens people were attracted, no one would have a good ending. Only now did young Master Hai realize what was going on. He stomped his feet and shouted, Still want to run? You want to run in front of this young master? Break this guy's legs for me." The middle-aged man's face was gloomy, probably because he was deceived by Yang Kai just now. He immediately stepped forward, raised his foot, and stomped on Yang Kai's thigh. Looking at his posture, he did not show the slightest mercy. Even if Yang Kai had a dragon bloodline body, he would not be able to withstand the power of a third-grade heaven splitter's stomp. When the time came, he would definitely end up with broken bones and broken legs. Just as he was considering whether to use the last golden annihilation plume to stew these guys in a pot, an angry shout suddenly came from afar. "Who dares be so presumptuous?" Seeing these people, Yang Kai could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. These guys were all wearing battle armor, and were surprisingly from the Great War Heavens. There was no need to use the golden annihilation plume. This thing was a trump card that could repel the lady boss, so it would be a waste to use it here. The leader was a silver-armored young general. In terms of aura, he was not necessarily stronger than the 2 third-grade heaven splitters by young Master Hai's side, but his momentum was much fiercer. Moreover, there was a faint smell of blood on his body. Obviously, he had experienced many life-and-death battles. Yang Kai silently recalled that when he had just arrived in Star City and passed by the Void Ferry, Old White had told him some things about the Great War Heavens. The Great War Heavens acted as a military unit and had a very rigid style. They were like an army, and their internal ranks were all divided according to military rules. The one guarding the Void Ferry was a general. The so-called general referred to middle-grade heaven splitters. 4th-grade heaven splitters were generals, 5th-grade heaven splitters were generals, and 6th-grade heaven splitters were great generals. Above them were marshals, grand marshals, and below them was this silver-armored young general. This silver-armored young general should also have a 3rd-grade heaven splitter cultivation base. The people he had brought were all heaven splitters, but their cultivation bases were clearly inferior to his. However, Yang Kai could clearly sense that these fellows' auras were faintly connected, as if they could use some kind of joint attack technique. With such a small team, even if they faced a 4th-grade heaven splitter, they would still have the strength to fight. While inwardly shocked by the Great War Heavens Foundation, Yang Kai also admired their ability to act. They had only just started fighting here, and this silver-armored young general had immediately brought people over. Their speed was truly fast. His heart finally relaxed. Yang Kai looked at young Master Hai and the others with schadenfreude. Since the Great War Heavens people had come, they were in for a bad time. The silver-armored young general clasped his hands behind his back and swept his eyes over everyone present, finally stopping on Yang Kai and Luo Hai. He coldly snorted and asked, "Who did it?" He was clearly asking who had injured Yang Kai and Luo Hai. The middle-aged man and the elderly man beside young Master Hai did not speak. At this time, there was naturally no reason for them to admit it. Young Master Hai casually said, "They injured themselves." If Madame Lan was here, this general would have to give her some face. Yet a mere servant like you dares to speak so arrogantly? The silver-armored young soldier's cold voice rang out in his ears, causing Yang Kai to grit his teeth. How could he not know that this time, even using the name of the first and didn't work? The Great War Heavens people were unbelievably stubborn. "Take them away!" The silver-armored young soldier shouted again and led the way, the others holding Yang Kai, Luo Hai, and Mr. Hai following closely behind. "Big brother Yang, how are you?" Luo Hai was on the verge of tears, full of self-blame. If it weren't for her, Yang Kai wouldn't have suffered such an undeserved calamity. She also didn't expect that Mr. Hai would use his power to bully others like this. She had clearly returned the reward, yet he still chased her all the way here. In the end, she attracted the people of the Great War Heaven and caused trouble. If she had known earlier, she wouldn't have rushed back no matter what. However, when she received Yang Kai's message just now, she thought that Yang Kai had something urgent to attend to. Moreover, she was a little repulsed by Mr. Hai, so she naturally left quickly. "I'm fine." Yang Kai shook his head. That punch wasn't too heavy, so he wasn't injured. It was just a brief moment of pain. It's all my fault. Luo Hai's eyes were a little red. Yang Kai said, "Don't say that. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame some trash." Turning his head, Yang Kai saw that Mr. Hai and the other two were also glaring at him, their eyes filled with malicious intent. They were all people with great backgrounds, so even if they were caught red-handed by the people of the Great War Heaven, there was nothing to be afraid of. At most, they would be released after paying some compensation. But these two pieces of trash were different. How could such trash have any compensation? They would definitely suffer a bit later. Mr. Hai secretly bore a grudge and swore to himself that he would teach Yang Kai a lesson later, letting him know the consequences of offending him. Luo Hai originally lived in the outermost area of Star City. There were many crooks mixed in with the honest folk, and the buildings were a mess. Generally speaking, this was where the lowest level of Star City lived, so there weren't many people here. But as they moved forward and arrived at the bustling area of Star City, countless people stopped and looked over, pointing at several people who had been tied up. They didn't know what crime these fellows had committed to actually cause them to fall into the hands of the people of the Great War Heaven. Many people didn't know the rules of other star markets, but in this Star City, the Great War Heaven ruled over everything. Those who dared to cause trouble here, no matter how big or small, would not have a good ending. There was once a fourth-stage heaven opening powerhouse who had fought with someone in Star City, but the result was that he was blocked by the people of the Great War Heaven and killed on the spot. And that fourth-stage heaven opening powerhouse was an elder from a second-class force. Since then, no one dared to casually cause trouble in Star City. If there really was some unresolvable grudge between them, they could set up a life or death contract and enter the Azura field to determine victory or defeat. In any case, they couldn't cause trouble in Star City. Mr. Hai and the others were ashamed and indignant. This feeling of being surrounded by so many people was very uncomfortable, and they wished they could find a piece of cloth to cover their faces with. Yang Kai and Luo Hai were also embarrassed. Yang Kai was a bit better off, as this matter wasn't their fault. It was Mr. Hai who had been too domineering and arrogant, bringing this disaster upon himself. Luo Hai was a woman after all. Being surrounded and pointed at by so many people, she could hear the constant whispers of disdain mixed in, causing her to feel ashamed and unable to show her face. However, this group of people from the Great War Heaven seemed to have the intention of showing off their might. Wherever there was a crowd, that was where they would go. Moreover, they walked at a leisurely pace, covering almost half of Star City. Seeing the silver-armored general teach Mr. Hai a lesson, Yang Kai had secretly applauded him, causing his impression of the Great War Heaven to rise to a whole new level. But now he no longer had a good impression of the Great War Heaven, only feeling that this group of people was truly abominable. After walking for more than an hour, the group arrived in front of a massive building. This was a large hall that stood at the center of Star City. It was the governor's mansion. Yang Kai had been in Star City for quite some time now, so he naturally had some understanding of the governor's mansion. This place was set up by the Great War Heaven in Star City, and was in charge of managing Star City. There was an extraordinarily strong governor in charge of this place. Normally, it was deserted, with only the disciples of the Great War Heaven coming in and out. Arriving here, the silver-armored general led them in, and then passed through a checkpoint, leading them all the way down into a dungeon. The light in the dungeon was dim, and a rotten smell filled the air. It was dark and damp. 1 cell per person locked them in. The silver-armored general waved his hand, and the several people who had been escorted back were immediately separated and locked into cells. Luo Hai had never experienced such a situation before, and her beautiful face immediately paled. Even though Yang Kai was comforting her, her mood was still unstable. With a bang, the cell door closed, and Yang Kai stood in the cell, a strange expression on his face. They had been locked up. This was the first time in his life that he had entered a cell. Fortunately, his cultivation was not restricted. Sweeping it with his divine sense, he found that the cell was not so solid. If he wanted to, he could forcibly break it open, but breaking it open would be useless. There was no way to escape, and it would only make things more troublesome. Now he could only hope that the people of the Great War Heaven would act impartially and release him and Luo Hai as soon as possible. Opposite him, young Master Hai and the 2 third-rank Kaitian realm masters coldly glanced over. Young Master Hai was constantly shouting and cursing, saying that he would make Yang Kai pay a painful price. Yang Kai turned a deaf ear to him, pretending not to hear. However, young Master Hai had only been shouting for a while before someone from the Great War Heaven came over and whipped him through the cell door, causing him to scream and not dare to make another sound. The person put away the whip and coldly glanced at young Master Hai before snorting lightly and turning his head to look around for a while before heading straight to Yang Kai's cell, opening the door and saying, "Get out here, the Master of Punishment wants to question you." Yang Kai raised his eyes and glanced at him before walking out of the cell. "Big brother Yang." Luo Hai looked at him nervously through the cell door. Yang Kai slowly shook his head, indicating for her to calm down. Following the disciples of the Great War Heaven out of the dungeon, Yang Kai came all the way to a large hall, where he saw the so-called Master of Punishment, an elderly man with a cold expression. He sat behind a table, his hands tucked into his sleeves. Yang Kai went forward to greet him and asked him questions. He didn't ask anything else, just the cause and effect of this conflict. Kai Yang explained everything in detail, without the slightest bit of embellishment. After the interrogation, the Master of Punishment ordered someone to take Yang Kai away, and the next person to be summoned was Luo Hai. Luo Hai did not know what she would encounter this time, so she looked at Yang Kai with an inquisitive gaze. Yang Kai transmitted his voice. "Tell me the truth." Luo Hai secretly nodded. At the same time, in the inner courtyard of the first inn, there was a knock on the door, sounding somewhat urgent. The door opened, and the lady boss frowned as she looked at Lao Bai and Chef standing in front of her. "What's the hurry?" Lao Bai's expression was serious as he said, "Yang Kai has been captured by the Great War Heavens people." The lady boss's expression changed. "When did this happen?" "Just now. Chef saw it when he went out." Chef nodded vigorously at the side. "I saw it with my own eyes." "Did you see it clearly?" the lady boss asked. Chef said, "Not only was he captured, but the woman who came to report last time was also captured. There are 3 other people I don't know, and I don't know what happened." Chapter 3972. Lao Bai said, "Lady boss, what should we do? The Great War Heavens people are a bunch of lunatics. What good would it be if Yang Kai was captured?" The lady boss said, "I'll go take a look." Then she flashed out and disappeared. Lao Bai and the chef looked at each other and sighed heavily. Yang Kai hadn't been in this world for long, so he didn't know about the Great War Heaven's reputation. They had long heard of it, and knew that even with the lady boss's help, Yang Kai would still suffer. They just didn't know if he could withstand it. After a cup of tea's time, in a large hall in the governor's office, a middle-aged man was reviewing documents behind a table. The middle-aged man sat there, his body straight like a spear. His expression was dignified without being angry. His head was tied with a golden crown, and his eyes were like stars. Although he was just sitting there, his body was still surrounded by a murderous aura, as if he had just killed his way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. This person was the governor of the Great War Heaven's Star City, Yi Tianxiong. A silver-armored soldier hurried in from outside and stood in the hall bowing. Reporting to the governor, Madame Lan of the First Inn requests an audience. The governor's eyes opened, and there was a flash of lightning. His pen was suspended in the air, and he squinted slightly. "Madame Lan? What's the matter?" The silver-armored soldier said, "Perhaps it's about the matter of her First Inn's waiter." He briefly explained the matter of a few people being captured. It had been a long time since anyone dared to cause trouble in Star City, and the Great War Heaven had also not captured anyone for a long time. Therefore, the matter just now quickly spread, and everyone in the governor's office heard about it. Hearing this, Yi Tianxiong put down his pen and said, "Invite her in." "Yes." The silver-armored soldier responded and quickly turned to leave. Not long after, a white shadow flashed past. The lady boss rushed in from the outside, wrapped in a gust of cold wind. She rushed directly in front of the governor and slammed her hand on the table. Gritting her teeth, she shouted, "Yi Tianxiong, release my men." With this slap, countless cracks appeared on the sturdy table, and the documents on the table flew up. With the sound of armors colliding, a large group of Great War Heaven's disciples rushed in from outside the door, all of them summoning their artifacts and glaring at the graceful figure in front of the table. In an instant, the hall was filled with killing intent, and the atmosphere was tense. Even so, the lady boss turned a deaf ear to it and only looked at Yi Tianxiong. The latter shook his body slightly, and the numerous documents that were floating in the air fell back to the ground. Just like before, he waved his hand at the people below. Those disciples of the Great War Heavens who rushed in after hearing the commotion didn't say a word and retreated in an instant. They really moved like lightning. It was only then that Yi Tianxiong slowly raised his eyes and glanced at the lady boss. 300 years ago we parted. Madame Lan is still as elegant as ever. I've long heard that Madame Lan has opened her first inn in my star market. I thought it was just a rumor, but it seems like it's true now. The lady boss said, "I'm not here to reminisce with you. Let him go." Yi Tianxiong asked, "Who is it?" "Stop playing dumb." The lady boss slammed the table again. "My man was captured by your men. Don't tell me you don't know. I've never heard of it." Yi Tianxiong replied calmly, then changed the topic. "But my men never capture innocent people. If Madame Lan's man didn't do anything wrong, he shouldn't have been captured." The lady boss said, "I don't care if he did anything wrong or not. He was captured by you. Let him go." Yi Tianxiong narrowed his eyes slightly. "What does Madame Lan think this is? Do you think you can come and go as you please? Are you going to let him go or not?" The lady boss looked straight into his eyes. Yi Tianxiong smirked and lowered his head to deal with the documents. The lady boss turned around and left. "All right. I'll announce to the world what happened in the bamboo forest in the Purple Jade Cave realm 800 years ago." As soon as she finished speaking, a figure appeared in front of her. It was Yi Tianxiong blocking her way. Their eyes met. The lady boss's smooth chin was held high with a smug look on her face. Yi Tianxiong's face twitched slightly. After a long while, Yi Tianxiong said, "You're still as shameless as before. A woman like you is also a weirdo." The lady boss smiled sweetly. "If you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. What do you say now?" Yi Tianxiong said, "Before the matter is investigated, no one can break the rules of Star City. Otherwise, where will the dignity of the governor's office be?" "So you're not letting him go?" The lady boss's eyes narrowed slowly. Yi Tianxiong said, "If it's proven that your men have nothing to do with this matter, I'll deal with it impartially." The lady boss thought for a moment and nodded. "All right, then I'll wait here and see how you deal with it impartially." She turned around and sat on a chair at the side. She did not hold back and slammed the table. "Don't you know how to serve tea when you're an esteemed guest? Is this how the people of Great War Heaven treat their guests?" Yi Tianxiong's eyes flashed with a hint of helplessness. He clapped his hands, and someone immediately rushed in from outside and saluted. "Governor." Yi Tianxiong pointed at the lady boss. "Serve the tea." The person turned to look at Madame Lan with an incredulous expression. However, he still replied, "Yes." He turned around and left. After that, Yi Tianxiong's divine sense surged again. No one knew who he was sending a message to. After a while, an elderly man walked in and greeted the viceroy. This elderly man was the master of punishments who had questioned Yang Kai and the others before. Yi Tianxiong said, "Have you questioned the people who committed the crime?" The master of punishments cupped his hands and said, "I have." "What exactly happened?" Although the master of punishments found it strange that the governor would ask about such a trivial matter, he did not dare to ignore the governor's questions. He immediately explained the whole story. He had asked them one by one just now, and had already figured out what had happened. Yi Tianxiong listened without batting an eyelid, but the lady boss was furious. "Listen to it yourself. It was those 3 people who caused trouble in Star City and disregarded the rules of Great War Heaven. My servant was just helping out when he saw injustice. You guys arrested him without any reason. If you don't give me an explanation for this, I won't let you off." How could he not know why he was tied up here? Turning his head, he saw that the executioner he had seen before slowly walking over with a soft whip in his hand. The whip was covered in barbs, and the tip of the whip looked like two dragon fangs. Yang Kai felt his hair stand on end. With such a whip on his body, how could there be any good outcome? Looking at the other side, Luo Hai was also tied up. She had clearly heard the discussions around her, and her face was completely pale. Yang Kai couldn't help but look to the lady boss for help. However, the lady boss slowly shook her head. He knew that there was nothing the lady boss could do about today's matter, and he couldn't help but feel a little angry. He and Luo Hai were purely victims. If not for Mr. Hai and the other two being so overbearing, how could they have been implicated? But now, they were actually tied up here and executed in front of so many people. Were the people of Great War Heavens all idiots? Chapter 3973. In front of the governor's mansion, it was not long before a sea of people gathered. All eyes focused on Yang Kai and Luo Hai. The executioner stepped forward with the dragon tooth whip in his hand, looked around and shouted, "These two have caused trouble in Star City, breaking the rules of Star City. The governor has ordered that each of them be given a dragon tooth whip as a warning to others." Yang Kai was about to defend himself when he heard a gust of wind, followed by a burst of heart-wrenching pain on his back, almost causing him to jump up. The pain was simply indescribable. He felt as if his entire soul was trembling. The words that were about to come out of his mouth were replaced by a roar. He could clearly feel that when the whip landed on his back, the clothes on his back were torn, his flesh lacerated, and blood flowed out. He didn't know what kind of special method this dragon tooth whip was made from, but when it struck a person, they would feel 10 times the pain. If it wasn't for Kai Yang's strong willpower, this whip strike would have caused him to faint on the spot. Since his debut, he had fought countless life and death battles, and had been seriously injured countless times, but never once had he felt such unbearable pain. His eyes widened, his eyeballs trembling violently in their sockets, blurring his vision. The lady boss's anxious voice sounded in his ears. "Are you done? Hurry up and untie me." Wait a minute." Yang Kai gritted his teeth and growled. The lady boss asked nervously, "What's wrong?" "There's still one more whip. I'll take it for her." Yang Kai turned to look at the executioner. The executioner had a strange expression when he heard this. "Are you sure?" No one had ever dared to try the dragon tooth whip again after tasting it. Not to mention anything else, this kind of willpower was really admirable. The lady boss did not let it go. "Are you crazy?" Yang Kai squeezed out an ugly smile. "Lady boss, Miss Luo is a woman after all. How can she face others in the future if she is whipped in public?" His clothes were already torn, his flesh lacerated. If this whip fell on Luo Hai's body, not to mention whether she could withstand it, her body would definitely be exposed. If a woman encountered such a thing, she really would not be able to face others again. The lady boss was both angry and amused. "You're still thinking about others at a time like this." Yang Kai bared his teeth and said, "No matter what, it was all because of me. If he hadn't hurriedly sent a message to Luo Hai, none of this would have happened." After that, he looked up at the disciplinary officer and said, "Do it." The disciplinary master glanced at him indifferently and didn't say anything. With a flick of his whip, it whistled through the air. With a bang, Yang Kai's entire body straightened up. The heart-wrenching pain that penetrated deep into his soul struck him again. A large piece of flesh was instantly missing from his back. After holding it in for a long time, a low growl rolled out of his throat. The lady boss used her fingers like a knife and made 2 strokes to untie Yang Kai. Once free, Yang Kai could not stand steadily and fell onto the lady boss. "Lord Yang." Luo Hai turned her head to look at him. Her beautiful eyes were red and tears flowed down her cheeks. Unfortunately, she was also tied up and couldn't move at all. I'm fine." Yang Kai gasped in pain, but he gritted his teeth and held on. "You shut up." The lady boss glared at him. With Yang Kai in her arms, her figure flashed as she rushed straight to the first inn. The lady boss's speed was so fast that it only took a few breaths to reach the first inn. Old Bai and the others who were standing at the door didn't see clearly before the lady boss rushed in like a gust of wind. They looked at each other, and their hearts skipped a beat. They hurriedly followed in. In the boudoir, the lady boss put Yang Kai down and let him lie on the bed. She reached out and tore open his clothes. Then, she pinched open Yang Kai's mouth and threw a pill into it. She ordered, "Swallow it." Kai Yang sucked in a breath of cold air as he swallowed the pill into his stomach. The next moment, a small hand touched his back. He didn't know what she was applying on his back. It was cool and refreshing, and the pain immediately lessened. His nose was filled with a faint fragrance. Yang Kai realized that he was in the lady boss's boudoir. He immediately felt embarrassed. "Lady boss, I'm sorry for the trouble." The lady boss didn't say anything. She only focused on applying the ointment on Yang Kai's back. A series of footsteps sounded. Yang Kai turned his head to look. He saw Old Bai, the cook, and the accountant huddle in. They stood beside the bed and looked at him. Old Bai asked worriedly, "Are you okay?" Yang Kai squeezed out a smile. "I'm fine." Chef clicked his tongue. "That's 2 whips. That's really vicious." The accountant sighed and said, "Why did you get into a conflict with someone in this star city?" The star city under the jurisdiction of the Great War Heavens is the most strict. No one dares to cause trouble in their territory. The lady boss snorted coldly. "Isn't it because of jealousy? You men. Haha, you're all the same." "Jealousy?" Old Bai was surprised. Yang Kai said with a wronged expression, "Don't listen to the lady boss's nonsense. It's not like that at all. It's someone bullying the weak and looking for trouble." "I'm talking nonsense." The lady boss sneered. "You even took a dragon tooth whip for someone else. How dare you say it's not jealousy? I think your soul has been taken away by that little vixen." As she said this, she slapped Yang Kai's back. Yang Kai's face suddenly turned pale. He almost lost his soul from the slap. Old Bai and the others watched from the side and swallowed their saliva. The room was silent for a moment. After a while, the lady boss stood up and said, "Rest well for the next few days. Don't move around. It's just a superficial wound. It'll be fine after a few days." "Thank you, lady boss." Yang Kai thanked her. He hesitated for a moment and said, "But lady boss, this is your room. If I rest here, where will you go?" "Rest well and rest well. Don't talk nonsense." Yang Kai didn't dare to say anything. Old Bai and the others were soon driven out by the lady boss. "Stay here. I'll be back soon," the lady boss said and turned to leave. After a while, the door opened and there was a rush of footsteps. It didn't sound like the lady boss's voice. Yang Kai looked sideways and suddenly said in surprise, "Miss Luo?" It was Luo Hai. On second thought, it should be the lady boss who brought her here. Otherwise, how could Luo Hai enter the inner yard of the first store? Luo Hai's eyes were red, and there were tears on her face. Obviously she had cried. She came to the bed and said in a trembling voice, "Lord Yang, how are you?" Yang Kai grinned. "It's just a superficial wound. Don't worry. The lady boss applied some medicine on me. I'll be fine in a few days." Tears welled up in Luo Hai's eyes. "If it weren't for me this time, Milord wouldn't have to suffer this punishment. Previously, Milord also took a whip for this concubine. This concubine is truly unable to repay this kindness." Yang Kai waved his hand and said, "It's a small matter. I can't just watch you get beaten up in public. Besides, today's matter isn't your fault or mine. It's that Mr. Hai who went too far. He can't tell right from wrong. Well, remember this. and teach them a lesson one day. Seeing that she was still full of self-blame and guilt, Yang Kai changed the topic. "All right, how did you get here? Did the lady boss ask you to come?" Luo Hai nodded. "Madame Lan said that master took a whip for me and asked me to take care of the master." She paused for a moment and said, "Oh right, Madame Lan also agreed to let me join the first inn. From now on, I'm also a member of the first inn." Yang Kai chuckled. "That's really something to celebrate. You don't have to run around like before." He thought to himself, "The lady boss has a sharp tongue but a soft heart. She was still calling me a vixen just now, but now she's taken me into the first inn." Luo Hai said, "Madame Lan said that master came to find me this time to ask me to join the first inn. Master's kindness to me is as great as the ocean. In the future, if master has any requests, I'll go through fire and water without hesitation." "You're too serious." Yang Kai laughed. "You've helped me a lot before. Let's call it even." Luo Hai shook her head slowly. "It's not the same." It was indeed not the same. She helped Yang Kai lead the way only because of her relationship with Gu Kong. Helping Yang Kai pass on the Feng Yin auction house incident was just a small matter. However, Yang Kai gave her the pill of great Tao, which allowed her to condense the seal of Tao. This time, he even took the dragon tooth whip for her and recommended her to join the first inn, so she didn't have to worry about her future livelihood. All these things, which one of them wasn't a great favor. To someone like her who lived at the bottom of the social ladder, Yang Kai's actions were tantamount to the grace of rebirth. As the two chatted, the lady boss sat on a chair in the lobby of the first inn, with an indifferent expression. The first inn wasn't open for business today, so the lobby was empty. Only the accountant and the chef stood beside the lady boss. Not long after, Lao Bai rushed in from outside. The lady boss looked up and said indifferently, "Did you find out?" Lao Bai said, "Yes, it's the son of an elder of the thoughtless heaven." He frowned and said, "Lady boss, I'm afraid this matter is a little troublesome. The other party's background is not small." The lady boss snorted coldly. "Who cares about his background? Whoever dares to touch my people will have to pay the price." She stood up slowly and said indifferently, "You've been lying low for too long. Do you think I don't dare to kill anyone?" Lao Bai, the chef, and the others looked at each other. They seemed to have recalled something and couldn't help but shudder. "Keep an eye on those people. If they leave Star City, let me know immediately." Lao Bai opened his mouth as if he wanted to persuade her, but he gave up in the end. He cupped his hands and said, "Yes." He knew that those guys were going to be in trouble. The lady boss hadn't been so angry for many years. It looked like this matter wouldn't be settled easily. For the next few days, Yang Kai was recuperating from his injuries. The lady boss occasionally showed up, but every time she did, she would reprimand Luo Hai. She seemed to have a very bad impression of her. Luo Hai had a submissive personality. Every time she was reprimanded, she didn't say much. She just kept admitting her mistakes, so the lady boss couldn't vent her anger. Yang Kai watched from the side with fear. He didn't know what was wrong with this woman. She kept making trouble for Luo Hai these past few days. After recuperating for a few days, his injuries were almost healed. He couldn't just lie in bed all the time, so he went to the lobby to help. Chapter 3974. After busying himself for a long time, he still didn't see the lady boss. Even Lao Bai wasn't there. Yang Kai couldn't help but feel curious. He ran to the counter and asked the cashier, "Where are the lady boss and Lao Bai?" The cashier raised his head and glanced at him, his eyes flashing. "They went out for some business." Yang Kai nodded and didn't ask any more questions. At the same time, on the second floor of a tea house opposite an inn in Star City, Lao Bai was sitting by the window. There was a pot of tea and several plates of fruit on the table. He was drinking tea and eating fruits while staring at the inn opposite. He had been here for several days. After all, this was an order from the lady boss, so he didn't dare to neglect it. At a certain moment, 3 people suddenly walked out of the inn. One was a young man, one was a middle-aged man, and one was an elderly man. At that moment, the elderly man was leading the way while the middle-aged man supported the young man. The young man's face was pale, as if he was heavily injured. There were faint traces of blood on his back. And it was not just the young man. The middle-aged man and the elderly man were the same. After glancing around, the three of them soared into the sky and rushed towards the Void Fairy. Lao Bai stared in the direction they left, his face full of struggle. After a long time, he sighed heavily and took out a communication bead. His divine sense surged as he sent out a message. At the same time, somewhere in the void outside the spirit state, where Star City was located, a beautiful woman suddenly opened her eyes. Her beautiful eyes were full of coldness and seemed to be able to freeze even the void. Who else could this woman be but the lady boss of the first inn? Time passed slowly, and in less than the time it would take to drink a cup of tea, a large ship appeared in the lady boss's field of vision, and the direction it was heading towards was exactly where she was standing. Seeing this, the lady boss clenched her fists, and a burst of crackling sounds rang out. When the ship was close enough, the lady boss suddenly threw a punch forward. The light of this punch was indescribable, and the whole world seemed to be overshadowed. Even from tens of thousands of feet away, a cracking sound could be heard from the hull of the ship before it exploded into pieces. From the shattered ship, three figures rushed out, covered in dust, and an old voice shouted, "Who is it?" When they saw who it was that blasted their ship apart, the pupils of the middle-aged man and the elderly man constricted. On the contrary, it was the young man who seemed to have not figured out the situation and cried out, "This young master is in so much pain. What's wrong with you two pieces of trash?" Yang Kai had received 2 dragon-tooth whips in front of the governor's mansion, but as the instigators, the punishment they received was naturally heavier, 5 whips each. Young Master Hai's strength was insufficient, so he only received 1 whip. The remaining 4 whips were taken by his 2 attendants. Even so, that 1 whip had taken away half of his life. Over the past few days, young Master Hai had been hiding in the inn to treat his wounds, taking a large number of pills. After barely managing to keep his life, he didn't dare to remain in Star Market any longer and hurriedly left. But who would have thought that as soon as he left Star Market, his flight-type artifact would explode, causing him great pain. After cursing out loud, he discovered that his 2 attendants were staring forward in horror. Young Master Hai followed their gazes, and his eyes lit up. "Which family does this little girl belong to? She's quite beautiful." As soon as this remark came out, the faces of the middle-aged man and the old man both paled as they cursed in their hearts. "You pig! I'm afraid we're going to die because of you." Although they didn't know who this peerless beauty in front of them was, her aura was as deep as the sea, and was not something the 2 of them could compare to. This was definitely a mid-rank splitting the heavens, perhaps even higher. How could such a master be humiliated so casually? However, young Master Hai didn't know what was good for him, and the more he looked at this woman, the more pleasing she seemed to be to his eyes. Even the wounds on his back didn't hurt as much as before. Grinning widely, he said, "Quickly capture her for me. This young master wants to treat her well." The middle-aged man's face darkened as he shouted in a low voice, "Young master, be careful with your words." The old man's body flashed as he stood in front of his young master, cupping his hands and saying, "This old man greets the master. May I ask why this master is blocking our way, and why you destroyed our flight artifact?" The lady boss smiled sweetly. "When you were making things difficult for my servant, did you not inquire about who was behind him? Your servant?" The old man frowned, then suddenly seemed to recall something and said in shock, "The first in, Madame Lan." The lady boss coldly snorted, "Old thing, you're not too stupid after all." The old man couldn't help but swallow his saliva, his mouth full of bitterness. Looking around, he found that this was the depths of the void, where he could neither advance nor retreat. Being blocked here, how could there be anything good to eat? Cold sweat appeared on his forehead as he cupped his hands and said, "So it's Madame Lan, this old man's eyes are blind, please forgive me." After a pause he continued, "We come from Thoughtless Heaven. My young master is the grandson of Elder Thoughtless Heaven Ocean." The lady boss said indifferently, "I know. You know?" The old man's face was filled with horror. Since she knew, she still dared to block their way here. and even destroyed their flight artifact? Was this woman crazy? This queen has been waiting here for you. The lady boss coldly snorted and raised her slender jade hand. Her palm was white and crystal clear, as flawless as white jade. But when it was raised, it gave the old man a great sense of crisis, as if the whole world was about to collapse. Take the young master back to Star City, the lady boss exclaimed. Hearing this, the middle-aged man immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and quickly fled with young Master Hai. Do you think you can escape? The lady boss snorted. The servants of my first inn, other than this queen, will fight to the death with anyone who dares to hit or scold me. As soon as she finished speaking, she slammed her palm down, turning the universe upside down and shattering the void. When the lady boss withdrew her palm, the entire void was quiet. Whether it was the old man, the middle-aged man, or young Master Hai, they were all gone, killing 3 people with a single palm, and they were all from thoughtless heaven. The lady boss acted as if nothing had happened. With a flick of her sleeve, she turned her head to look at a certain spot in the void and coldly said, "Was this a good show?" In the void, a ripple spread, and a general in golden armor leisurely appeared, wearing a cherry blossom helmet and a long sword at his waist. If Yang Kai was here, he would definitely recognize this golden-armored general as the one who guarded the Void Fairy. He was a 5th-stage heaven-opening realm cultivator, and was only slightly weaker than Governor Yi Tianxiong, who oversaw Star City. The general in golden armor frowned slightly. Why bother? It's fine to teach them a lesson, but killing them won't do you any good. The lady boss squinted at him. So what if I kill them? Not only will I kill them, I will also kill Yi Tianxiong right now. The general in golden armor was speechless, just a worker. Although he guarded the Void Fairy, it did not mean that he knew nothing about what happened in Star City. Furthermore, the lady boss had left the Void Fairy with murderous intent 2 days ago, so he could easily find out the ins and outs of the matter. That's my first-ins worker. The lady boss snorted. The general in golden armor nodded repeatedly. Yes, he's your first-ins worker. Your first-ins worker is more valuable than other people's worker. He sighed. After all, it's thoughtless heaven. In other words, it was fine to just teach them a lesson, but why did she have to kill them directly? Send a message to Hai Pingle right now. Let's see if he dares to come find me for revenge. The general in golden armor stared deeply at the lady boss and sighed. After being dormant for 1,200 years, are you going to make trouble again? You might not be so lucky this time. The lady boss glanced at him, flicked her sleeves and said, I won't attack unless I'm attacked. After saying that, she rushed toward the Void Fairy. The general in golden armor stared at her back and slowly shook his head. Such a woman was more outstanding than many men, and he did not know if she would have a good ending. The return of the lady boss did not cause too much of a stir. Yang Kai did not even know when she came back. He only knew that one day, she suddenly appeared in the lobby and warmly greeted the customers in the shop. Days passed, and nothing happened. Yang Kai spent all his time helping in the shop and refining the territory shuttle. From time to time, he would inquire about the Tree of World and the Earth Element Heaven opening materials. But unfortunately, he did not find anything. He had also been to the Fengyan auction house many times. Although the lady boss had made a scene at the auction house because of him and White, he had the 7 faces with him, so he could enter safely by changing his appearance. He could not find any information about the Tree of World in the auction house. There were Earth Element materials, but they were all below the 5th grade, so they were meaningless to him. Whether it was the immortal trees with element energy, or the Golden Crow Primordial Flames fire element energy, they were all top-notch powers. Yang Kai did not want to waste such a good foundation, so he chose to condense Earth element energy with high requirements. It had to be at least the 7th grade, or his future achievements would be limited. However, high-quality Earth element materials were not so easy to find. The Golden Crow Primordial Flame last time was just a coincidence, and it was unrealistic to expect such an opportunity again. This made Yang Kai a little anxious. If he could not succeed, he would have to split open the sky. Outside this universe, he was still too weak. Last time, when he was troubled by the two third-grade heaven-opening experts by young Master Hai's side. He could not resist. He wanted to ask the lady boss, but he was too embarrassed. Moreover, if he really did ask, he would definitely expose some secrets. Chapter 3975. Lao Bai smiled proudly. I'm going to break through to the heaven-opening realm. Yang Kai's expression turned serious. Really, this was a joyous occasion for anyone who pursued the martial Tao tirelessly. Outside of the universe, the open heaven realm was a dividing line. Above open heaven and below open heaven were completely different existences. After pursuing the martial Tao for one's entire life, he had entered the heaven-opening realm, the dragonfish transformation realm. He suddenly remembered that he had seen Lao Bai fight at the Fengyan auction house. The power of the 5 elements lingered around his body, and he was obviously half a step into the heaven-opening realm. Now it seemed that Lao Bai was only a step away from the heaven-opening realm. He had probably already condensed 6 types of power, and only lacked the last one to reach perfection. Congratulations! Yang Kai cupped his fists and congratulated him. He was truly happy for Lao Bai, and also slightly envious. Lao Bai could be considered to have achieved success and fame. He didn't know when he would be able to break through to the heaven-opening realm. Lao Bai laughed loudly and was in high spirits. He slapped Yang Kai on the shoulder. Let's see if that Yun Zhenhua still dares to make things difficult for us when we go out in the future. Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. What grade do you want to break through to? From the meaning of his words, he didn't take Yun Zhenhua seriously at all. Yun Zhenhua was at the 4th grade of the heaven-opening realm. Lao Bai had the confidence to say this, so it was obviously above the 4th grade. Lao Bai bared his teeth and raised his hand. 5th grade. Yang Kai understood. The lady boss snorted. You're not even in the picture yet, and you're already so confident. Aren't you afraid that you won't be able to end things when the time comes? Lao Bai immediately said with a bitter face, Lady boss, don't say such inauspicious words. I've been steadily building my foundation for the past 1,000 years. There shouldn't be any problems. The lady boss said seriously. On the path of the martial Tao, any carelessness can lead to failure. If you're going to break through with this mentality, you should wait another 100 years. Lao Bai's expression became solemn, and he bowed. You're right, lady boss. I'll remember it. When the time comes, I'll do my best and leave everything to fate. The lady boss looked deeply at him, and her tone became much gentler. You were taught by me. Every step of your foundation is very solid. When the time comes, as long as you can calm your mind, it shouldn't be a big problem to break through. Yes, White replied respectfully. Go and prepare. We'll leave in 3 days. The lady boss waved her hand. Senior White replied before he bowed and left. Looking at his back, Yang Kai's face was full of envy. Suddenly, he heard the lady boss say, You should also get ready. We'll leave together in 3 days. Me. Yang Kai was stunned, but then he understood the proprietress' intentions. The scene of a cultivator breaking through to split the heavens was extremely rare, and ordinary people would rarely see it. The proprietress wanted to take him to observe. If he could have this experience, then when he broke through to split the heavens in the future, it would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. Overjoyed, he chuckled. Thank you, Lady Boss. I will never forget Lady Boss's great kindness. I will definitely repay you in the future. Glibtongue, get lost. The Lady Boss snorted and waved her sleeve, sweeping Yang Kai out of the door. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, outside the first inn, the Lady Boss instructed the accountant, the cook, and the others to take care of the inn. Then she led Yang Kai and Senior White into the sky. After passing through the Void Ferry, she summoned the ship and headed straight for a certain place in the void. Compared to his excitement 3 days ago, Senior White's state of mind had obviously calmed down at this moment, and he was more indifferent than before. The Lady Boss stood on the deck and leaned against the side of the ship, looking at the magnificent scenery in the void. Yang Kai and Senior White stood behind her, and the 3 of them moved forward together. After flying for more than half a day, the ship still didn't show any signs of stopping. Young Kai couldn't help but ask curiously, "Lady boss, where are we going?" The lady boss's beautiful hair fluttered in the wind, and she said without turning her head, "We're going to look for the last piece of split the heavens material." Young Kai was stunned. "You haven't gotten the last piece of split the heavens material yet?" When he saw how excited Senior White was earlier, he thought that the materials had already been gathered. So it turned out that they still had to go look for it. Senior White said, "Fifth grade yang qi is very rare. Once it appears, countless people will go crazy over it. It's also because our first in is well informed that a fifth grade yang qi has appeared in the territory of the Golden Rainbow sect. Otherwise, why would we have to go so far?" Yang Kai understood. He originally thought that they had flown so far to find a place where there was no one around, so that Senior White could focus on his breakthrough. So there was another reason. Moreover, based on Senior White's words, Senior White should be lacking yang energy. He couldn't help but frown. If that's the case, then wouldn't there be another fight? Senior White grinned. That place is very well hidden, and it's difficult for ordinary people to find it. It shouldn't be discovered by others. We just need to absorb it this time. Yang Kai nodded. The lady boss suddenly asked, "What level of split the heavens do you want to achieve?" Yang Kai said casually, "Of course, the higher the better." The lady boss said, "Everyone knows that the higher the better, but there is a limit to one's strength, and everyone has different limits. The higher the quality of energy absorbed, the higher the level of split the heavens will be in the future. Everything has to be done according to one's ability." "I'll keep that in mind." Senior White glanced at Yang Kai and said, "Speaking of which, what level of split the heavens material have you absorbed? And what kind of energy have you condensed now?" Yang Kai couldn't help but be speechless. If it were a few months ago, he would have answered casually, but now, he really didn't want to lie to the lady boss and the others. However, it wasn't easy to say this. If he told them that he had condensed an 8th, or even 9th grade split the heavens material, they probably wouldn't believe him. Seeing his silence, the lady boss slowly turned to look at him, and said with a smile, "If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Who doesn't have secrets?" Chapter 3976. The area of this Yang Sealing land was not very large, about the size of 2 star markets. Following the source of Yang Qi, the 3 of them quickly arrived in front of a lake. The lake was sparkling and the water was clear, but it was filled with Yang Qi. It was the place where Yang Qi gathered. The lady boss used her divine sense to investigate for a moment, then nodded slightly and said, "It is indeed 5th grade Yang Qi." Hearing this, Lao Bai's spirit was lifted. He cupped his fists and said, "Lady boss, I'm going. Be very careful." The lady boss reminded him. Yang Kai also cupped his fists and said, "Lao Bai, I wish you good luck." Lao Bai grinned at him. "Wait for my good news." His figure flickered as he dove into the lake, but there was not the slightest ripple. Under the watchful eyes of Yang Kai and the lady boss, Old Bai swam to the bottom of the lake like a fish. There a mass of extremely pure Yang Qi gathered. Old Bai rushed into this mass of Yang Qi and sat down cross-legged, silently circulating his secret art. His expression was unprecedentedly serious. 1,000 years of cultivation, just for today. Lao Bai went all out. After watching for a moment, and seeing that Lao Bai had absorbed the Yang Qi wholeheartedly, and condensed the last of the Yang Qi, the lady boss took Yang Kai to walk around the lake. From time to time, she would form hand seals, and send a formation flag into the void. Although this place was hidden, everything had to be prepared. Lao Bai's advancement to splitting the heavens was of great importance, and could not be careless. Therefore, even if the lady boss personally came to protect him, she still had to set up a formation here, to prevent Lao Bai from being disturbed. After spending 2 hours, the lady boss laid down 16 flags by the lakeside. When the last flag was laid down, the lady boss waved her jade-like hands and shouted, "Up!" Silently, a thick fog rippled out from the lakeside and enveloped the entire lake. Nothing else could be seen. Yang Kai had been following behind the lady boss the whole time, watching silently. Although he didn't know what kind of attack this spirit array could block, since it was made by the lady boss, it shouldn't be too bad. What's more, the lady boss was a 6th-order heaven-opening cultivator. Even in the 3,000 worlds, she was a well-known master. With her here, and the support of this spirit array, even if someone accidentally broke into this place, there was no need to worry about old by being disturbed. After doing all this, the lady boss turned her head to look at Lao Bai and said softly, "The rest is up to him." After advancing to opening the heavens, one would condense the 7 energies of yin, yang, 5 elements, and create a new world within one's body. Once one succeeded, a minor universe world would appear within one's body. At that time, one would no longer need to draw upon the power of the world, and would be able to use the power of the world on their own. This was the greatest characteristic of the opening the heavens realm. Great emperors needed to rely on a certain world to be able to use the power of the world. Heaven splitters did not need this because they already had a world in their bodies. Moreover, compared to the great emperors of the various worlds, the power that heaven splitters could unleash could grow. The strength of their power was closely related to the strength of their world. Outsiders were unable to help with this matter at all. The lady boss had only come here to protect Lao Bai, just in case. Strolling over to a slope 3 kilometers away from the lake, the lady boss waved her hand and took out a table and 2 chairs. She also placed a set of tools for brewing tea on the table. Seeing this, Yang Kai did not need her to say anything and began to boil the tea himself. If it was in the past, he definitely would not have been willing to do something like this. But after receiving the lady boss's favor time and time again, Yang Kai's impression of this woman had changed drastically. He no longer felt the rejection and hostility from the beginning. However, what followed was a few questions that he kept bottled up in his heart. Very soon, the tea was ready and the lady boss gracefully sipped it, chatting with Yang Kai from time to time, occasionally letting out a giggle. Yang Kai also heard many anecdotes about famous people from outside this world from her. Time passed quickly. 3 days later, there was still no movement from the lake array, but Yang Kai knew that this matter could not be rushed. Lao Bai had to condense his yang attribute energy first before he could break through to the heaven splitter realm. This was not something that could be done in just a few days. 5 days later, at a certain moment, the lady boss, who was chatting with Yang Kai, suddenly turned serious. Her beautiful eyes stared at the spirit array on the lake. Her pair of gem-like eyes seemed to be able to pierce through the void as she looked into the spirit array and shouted, "It's starting!" Hearing this, Yang Kai's expression became serious, and he also turned his head to look in that direction. Unfortunately, he did not have the lady boss's strength and eyesight, so apart from the roiling fog, he could not see anything at all. However, Yang Kai could also feel that today was different from before. Previously, the array around the lake had not moved at all, but today the fog was roiling, so it was obvious that Lao Bai was moving inside. Yang Kai could not help but become nervous. "Lady boss, what are Lao Bai's chances of success?" The lady boss slowly shook her head. "This kind of thing is hard to say. Even someone with heavenly talent has the risk of failure. Everything depends on his own luck." She might as well not have said anything, but the path of cultivation had always been like this. Just as she was nervously watching, the lady boss suddenly frowned. She let out a soft gasp of surprise and looked in a certain direction. That was the entrance to the sun-sealing land. Very soon, Yang Kai also felt that something was wrong, because there was a clear fluctuation of space principles coming from that direction. Someone had come in. Yang Kai was shocked and hurriedly looked in that direction. What he saw was a crack in the void, and the space principles inside were fluctuating, and a figure stepped out from it. Even though they were dozens of kilometers apart, Yang Kai could clearly see the appearance of the person who had come, and he could not help but frown. Why is it him? He did not know many people outside of this world, so he did not expect that the person who had come here would actually be someone he knew. Moreover, there was a bit of a conflict between them. The person who had broken through the void was none other than Elder Yu of the Tempest Auction House. Previously, Yang Kai and Lao Bai had been injured by this guy, and the lady boss had rushed to his door when she heard the news. They had directly fought in the Tempest auction house, and Elder Yu had spat out 3 liters of blood. After not seeing him for a few months, this guy had already recovered from his injuries. As soon as he entered, his eyes wandered around, and he quickly fixed them on the lady boss. His turbid eyes immediately shone, with an unforgettable hatred. Following closely behind Elder Yu, one figure after another tore through the void and arrived. In the blink of an eye, for people had rushed into this small sun-sealing land. There were men and women old and strong. Among them, Elder Yu's aura was the weakest, only at the 4th stage heaven opening realm. The other 3 were all stronger than him. And Yang Kai even felt a profound aura not inferior to the lady bosses from one of them. This guy was at the 6th stage heaven opening realm. What was going on? Yang Kai's eyebrows twitched. Why had so many experts suddenly come to this sun-sealing land? And all of them were at the middle stage heaven opening realm. What made Yang Kai feel even more uneasy was that as soon as these 4 people came in, they all focused their gazes on the lady boss. Some had dignified gazes, some had hatred in their eyes, and some had killing intent on their faces. Even though Yang Kai did not understand the specific situation, he faintly felt that something was wrong. So that's how it is. The lady boss gently nodded and swept her gaze over these people one by one. So this is a trap. That's right, this is a trap specially designed to lure you here. Lan Yuhua, when you were acting presumptuously at my Fengyan auction house a few months ago, did you ever think that you would end up like this? Elder Yu coldly shouted, a look of satisfaction on his aged face. A trap? Yang Kai turned pale with fright, and all the hair on his body stood on end. On second thought, this kind of trap was not too difficult to set up. The only difficulty was this sun-sealing land. As a member of the First Inn, it should not be too difficult for someone to inquire about him. As long as the news of the 5th stage Yang Fiend's appearance was released, the lady boss would definitely bring Old Bai here to take a look. As long as they came, they would fall into this trap. This was bad. Although the lady boss was at the 6th stage heaven opening realm, among these people, except for Elder Yu, who was not strong enough, each of them had a stronger aura than the last. Among them, 2 were at the 5th stage heaven opening realm, and 1 was at the 6th stage heaven opening realm. Trapped in this sun-sealing land, how could the lady boss be their opponent? This situation was simply a sure-kill situation. With a thought, Yang Kai immediately transmitted, Lady boss, if you have the chance, quickly leave this place. There's no need to worry about Old Bai and I. As long as you don't die, Old Bai and I will be fine. After all, he and Old Bai were only employees of the First Inn. As long as the lady boss escaped, these people might not do anything to them out of fear of harming the innocent. On the other hand, if the lady boss was really in danger, he and Old Bai would definitely die. The lady boss replied, since they set up this trap to lure me into it, how could they let me leave so easily? This area has probably been sealed off long ago. Unless we kill our way out, we won't be able to leave. Yang Kai's heart sank when he heard this. Although he knew that the lady boss was right, as someone from the Emperor realm, who had only condensed the power of wood and fire, there was nothing he could do to help in a battle of this level. He immediately felt powerless and clenched his fists. The lady boss looked at Elder Yu and sneered. You really have a lot of face, you old bastard. You actually managed to get so many helpers. Elder Yu snorted. It's not that this old man has a lot of face. It's you who brought this upon yourself. Back then, you relied on the support of someone behind you to do whatever you wanted in these 3,000 worlds. You haven't forgotten who you've offended, right? When Elder Yu finished speaking, the middle-aged man with a dignified appearance standing beside him said with his hands behind his back, Madam Lan, after so many years, do you still remember this seat? Head of the Golden Rainbow Province, Qi Jin. The lady boss smiled softly. What? I spared your life back then, but now you want to die again? If you want to die, you should have told this seat earlier. I could have fulfilled your wish. As soon as she said this, a fierce light flashed in Qi Jin's eyes. Madam Lan's tone is still so arrogant. That's because you're too weak. The lady boss snorted and looked at Qi Jin thoughtfully. So you're saying that this sun-sealing land isn't actually ownerless, but belongs to your Golden Rainbow Province? After all, this was the territory of the Golden Rainbow Province, so the lady boss naturally had this guess. Qi Jin said, "This place has been explored by my Golden Rainbow Province since 3,000 years ago. Normally, it's hidden by a formation. If it wasn't for the fact that I wanted to lure Madame Lan into a trap, how could it have been discovered?" Chapter 3977. I was wondering why a fifth-stage baleful Yang suddenly appeared. So that's why. The lady boss nodded lightly. Sun-sealing land is not an ordinary place for any faction. Aren't you afraid that a battle will break out and destroy this precious land? Qi Jin's eyes were solemn. If I can resolve my worries, what is a mere sun-sealing land? Although he said that, Qi Jin's expression was clearly pained. After all, if a battle really broke out here, sun-sealing land would definitely be lost. For the Jinhong province, this was a huge loss. It seems you are determined to have me die here. If you don't die, crazy woman, how can we have a day of peace? An old man standing to Qi Jin's left shouted. This old man's hair and beard were white, but his face was ruddy. An extremely ferocious aura emanated from his body, as if he had just emerged from a sea of corpses. He coldly snorted. You were only a sixth-stage heaven opening, but you killed so many people that the 3,000 worlds turned into rivers of blood and covered the land with corpses. If you were allowed to ascend to the seventh stage one day, how can there be a place for us in this vast universe? The lady boss looked at the old man coldly and said softly, If I don't die today, I will definitely flatten your Sun Luo altar and slaughter your entire Ling Chunqiu. The old man called Ling Chunqiu's expression changed, and he couldn't help but take a step back. Clearly, he was taken aback by the lady boss's aura. But he quickly gritted his teeth and said, Since we are here today, don't even think about leaving alive. The lady boss flicked her sleeve, too lazy to talk nonsense with him. She coldly looked at the last person. That person was a beautiful woman, who looked to be around 30 to 40 years old. Her figure was graceful, and her waist was graceful, especially her pair of peach blossom eyes, which were watery and captivating. Do you also want to make things difficult for this queen? The lady boss asked indifferently. The beautiful woman's eyes flashed, and she stepped forward and bowed. Greetings, elder sister Lan. The lady boss said. So you still remember me, your elder sister. I thought you had already forgotten. The woman said, He will always remember elder sister's kindness in cultivating me. How could I forget it? If I didn't dare to forget, how could I dare to come here? The lady boss clenched her teeth and said, It's fine if you retreat now, but if you continue to be stubborn, don't blame me for ignoring our sisterhood in the past. The woman called He slowly shook her head and said, Elder sister Lan, although I am grateful for your nurturing back then, if it weren't for your stubbornness he wouldn't have died. Although it wasn't my intention to come here today, I still want to put an end to what happened back then. Elder sister, please forgive me. The lady boss stared at her deeply for a long time before nodding her head. All right, since you have such intentions, then I'll fulfill your wish. Otherwise, I'll always feel like I owe you something. But you have to remember, fighting and killing is a matter of life and death. If you accidentally die in my hands, then don't blame me on the road to the Yellow Springs. Yueha doesn't dare. The woman bowed. What's the point of talking so much nonsense with her? Attack together and kill her. Ling Chuanqiu's murderous aura surged, and his face was full of murderous intent, as if he couldn't wait to chop the lady boss into pieces right now. However, he was only a fifth-rank cultivator after all. Facing such a fierce and powerful existence like the lady boss, he still felt a little apprehensive. This trip was only led by the leader of the Jin Rainbow State, Qi Jin. If Qi Jin didn't make a move, he wouldn't dare to be presumptuous. Qi Jin took a step forward, his hands behind his back, and shouted, Madame Lan. Regardless of who was right or wrong in the past, countless disciples of the Jin Rainbow State died at your hands. Today I, the leader of the Jin Rainbow State, will avenge them. If you know what's good for you, then obediently surrender. If you dare to resist, then don't blame me for bullying you with numbers. You want me to surrender? Dream on, the lady boss shouted. If that's the case. Qi Jin took a deep breath and suddenly said, then let's fight. As soon as his words fell, the phantom of a miniature universe world behind him flashed and disappeared. Qi Jin threw a punch, the aura of world force filling the air as a giant fist rushed towards the lady boss. The moment he attacked, Ling Chuanxiu and Yu He, who had been prepared for this, summoned their artifacts together and sent a barrage of attacks towards the lady boss. In an instant, the yuan qi around the lady boss became chaotic and the void trembled. Yang Kai's entire body tensed up. When the lady boss was talking to those people, he had already been thinking of a way out. But in the face of absolute strength, all schemes and tricks were just empty words. For a time, he was at a complete loss. The three mid-rank heaven splitters suddenly attacked, and Yang Kai only felt his skin tighten as a great crisis enveloped him. Even though these attacks weren't aimed at him, in the face of such world-destroying power, just the aftermath alone was enough to kill him on the spot. At this critical moment, a gentle force wrapped around him and pushed him away. How could Yang Kai not know that this was the lady boss protecting him at this critical moment? The scene in front of him changed rapidly, and when it came to a stop, he was already dozens of kilometers away. Looking around, Yang Kai's eyes nearly popped out of their sockets as he saw that the place where the lady boss was standing had been enveloped by a huge light. Inside this light, a violent force raged, making it impossible to see the lady boss's figure. 1 against 3, Yang Kai was already at an absolute disadvantage, but at this critical moment of life and death, the lady boss had still spared a trace of her strength to protect him. So how could he deal with such a terrifying attack? The light quickly dissipated, revealing a white figure standing in the void. Yang Kai could clearly see a trace of blood overflowing from the corner of the lady boss's mouth. This dark red blood stain stung Yang Kai's eyes like a sharp knife stabbing into his heart, causing him to clench his fists and tremble. If it weren't for her protecting him, the lady boss wouldn't have been injured. Although the attacks of those three were terrifying, the lady boss could have easily avoided them. Junior, do you still have the mood to care about others at a time like this? An old voice came from the side. Yang Kai turned his head and saw that Elder Yu of the Tempest Auction House was standing not far away, looking at him sinisterly. When you were behaving atrociously in my Tempest Auction House, did you ever think that today's situation would occur? Although Elder Yu was also a middle-rank Kai Tian, he was still only at 4th rank. It wouldn't make much difference whether he participated in the battle with the lady boss or not. So he didn't participate and directly came to find trouble with Yang Kai. Last time, he had been beaten and humiliated because of this brat in front of him. Although Elder Yu hated the lady boss for being vicious and merciless, his impression of Yang Kai wasn't very good either. Now that he had a chance, how could he let him go? Old man, you should be rejoicing that the lady boss didn't kill you back then. Today, you actually set up such a sinister trap. The moment the lady boss escapes will be the moment you die. Yang Kai gnashed his teeth and glared at him. Elder Yu laughed coldly. I don't know if she can escape, but I'm afraid you won't be able to see it, because you will die at my hands. As he spoke, Elder Yu slowly reached out a hand towards Yang Kai, then suddenly clenched it. Following his movements, Yang Kai could clearly feel the space around him crazily compressing towards him, as if it wanted to crush him into dust. At this critical moment, he hurriedly activated the law of space and flashed out. Elder Yu obviously hadn't thought of this. Seeing Yang Kai escape, he couldn't help but be a little surprised. Then he flew into a rage out of humiliation. I wanted to give you a quick death, but who knew that you wouldn't appreciate it? Since that's the case, then you can slowly enjoy it. Turning his head, he saw a figure rushing rapidly into the air. It was Yang Kai, who had just escaped. Elder Yu frowned, but didn't chase after him. After all, that was the battlefield of Madame Lan, Qi Jin and the others. He didn't want to get involved so easily. However, Yang Kai's actions made him laugh. This brat from the Emperor realm actually wanted to interfere. Was he looking to die? Yang Kai's expression was anxious. After escaping from Elder Yu's hands, he hurried towards the battlefield. He didn't know how strong the lady boss was, or what she had done to attract the hatred of so many people. But 1 against 3, she definitely wasn't a match. If he could help her get rid of a 5th-rank splitter, it would definitely help reduce the pressure on the lady boss. Perhaps he could even change the situation. His own strength wouldn't be of any use in a battle like this. Instead, he would be a burden to the lady boss. However, he still had a trump card in his hand. Golden Mietting Plume. Back then, Niameng had given him 3 golden plumes. He had used one at the Golden Crow Divine Palace to kill the big golden crow that had faked its death. He had used one on the lady boss, causing her to suffer a small injury. There was still one left that he hadn't used. The Niameng golden plumes could injure the lady boss. If he used it on a 5th-rank splitter, he could at least severely injure the other party. If he was lucky, he might even be able to kill him. At that time, he would naturally be able to change the situation. With this thought in mind, he ignored Elder Yu and rushed towards the battlefield. But soon, Yang Kai discovered that his thinking was too simple. On the battlefield, figures flitted about, secret techniques and secret treasures bloomed, and powerful energy fluctuations swept out in all directions. Not to mention using the Niameng golden plumes to sneak attack a 5th-rank splitter. He couldn't even get within 10 li of it. Several attacks were swept back by the aftermath of that power. Looking up, he saw that the lady boss had been distracted by his actions. She was already at a disadvantage, and now she was having trouble dealing with it. Yang Kai was anxious. He looked at the lady boss's position again. She was faintly guarding the lake where the young fiend was. Obviously, she had been protecting Lao Bai, who was on the verge of breaking through. Although the lady boss had set up a formation around the lake that could block some of the energy fluctuations, the battle this time was extremely dangerous. Even with the formation, it couldn't stop it with all its might. It was also because of this that the lady boss was somewhat restrained and couldn't go all out. On the other hand, Qi Jin and the others had no scruples, and each of their moves was deadly. Lao Bai. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. If Lao Bai could successfully break through at this time, then the lady boss would definitely have a great help. At that time, even if Lao Bai's realm was unstable, he would be able to tie down an enemy and alleviate the lady boss's current crisis. However, breaking through to splitter the heavens was extremely dangerous. Lao Bai would be disturbed, so could he still succeed? Behind him, an aura locked onto him. Without needing to look back, Yang Kai knew that Elder Yu was already walking towards him, step by step. I've long heard that Madame Lan cares for her subordinates. Now it seems that it's true. How fortunate it is for the workers of the First Inn to have a shopkeeper like Madame Lan. Elder Yu shouted loudly as he walked over. Yang Kai suddenly had a bad feeling. Chapter 3978. As Elder Yu spoke, he had already arrived 1.5 miles away from the lake. He glanced at the lake that was steaming with clouds and mist and said, "If I'm not wrong, it should be by Qi inside, right?" His voice was neither loud nor soft, just enough for the lady boss, who was in the midst of the fierce battle, to hear it clearly. Since they could find out that Lao Bai needed the Yang Qi to advance to the heaven-splitting realm, it was not difficult to guess who was in the formation. "I'm going to take Bai Qi's life now. Lan Yurua, let's see how you choose." Elder Yu shouted. "Despicable." Yang Kai gritted his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. This old man obviously saw that the lady boss was being restrained at this moment. She did not want to cause too much disturbance in the battle and interfere with Lao Bai's advancement, so he said these words. Once these words were spoken, it would definitely disturb the lady boss's state of mind. Moreover, if he really did make a move, unless the lady boss stopped him, there would be no one who could protect Lao Bai's safety. Once the lady boss was distracted, the already disadvantaged situation would definitely become even worse. In a battle of life and death, the winner takes all. What's the difference between despicable and noble? Elder Yu glanced at Yang Kai coldly. His hand seals changed, activating the qi of heaven and earth. The aura of the world force lingered around him. Looking at his posture, It seemed that he was about to bombard the formation of the lake. Yang Kai did not dare to be negligent. The key to today's situation was Lao Bai. If Lao Bai could successfully advance, the lady boss could completely break free from the restraints and fight the three people without restraint. At that time, Lao Bai would join the battle. Even if he could not win, he would have the strength to protect himself. Therefore, no matter what, he could not let the old dog named Yu ruin Lao Bai's plan. Thinking of this, Yang Kai's figure flashed, and he pounced on Elder Yu like a startled swan. Elder Yu stood in place, his expression as calm as an ancient well. He stared at Yang Kai's figure that pounced on him, and there was a faint mockery in his eyes. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. You're courting death. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his palm and pushed forward. The speed of this palm strike could be said to be extremely slow. However, as this palm strike was pushed out, it was as if an entire world was pressing down on it. As the palm force pushed forward, the surrounding space shattered, and everything turned into dust. Yang Kai, who had been rushing forward at high speed, seemed to have crashed into an invisible wall in an instant. His extreme movement turned into extreme stillness, and when a loud bang rang out, his internal organs rolled over and over, and blood gushed out of his mouth. However, he did not retreat at all. He reached out and grabbed the black dragon spear in the air. Gathering all the power in his body, he fiercely thrust the spear forward. Mysterious true intent of the martial Tao lingered on the tip of the spear. At the tip of the spear, there was even a fist-sized black hole that flashed before disappearing. Elder Yu raised his eyebrows slightly, feeling a little surprised. He had thought that with Yang Kai's cultivation, he would be reduced to dust in an instant. Who would have thought that he would only be injured? Moreover, the power released from this spear didn't seem like something that someone from the Emperor realm could display. Elder Yu's eyesight was extremely sharp, and at a glance, he could tell that the spear in Yang Kai's hand was no ordinary object. The black dragon spear was a gift from the giant god spirit. Yang Kai didn't know who had refined this spear, but through his dragon vein, he could clearly feel that this spear had been refined from the spine of an adult dragon. When the spear struck out, the black dragon appeared, and the dragon's roar resounded, shaking the world. This kind of spear was a top-notch artifact even outside of this universe, but with Yang Kai's current strength, he was unable to display its full power. Dragon pressure filled the air, and the black dragon roamed. Elder Yu was shocked, and his eyes widened as he cried out involuntarily. A dragon artifact? He wasn't shocked by the power of Yang Kai's spear, but because this little brat actually had such a treasured artifact. If this spread to the ears of the dragon race, how could the dragon race let him off so easily? For a moment, even the little bit of greed in his heart dissipated. Even if such a spear was given to him, he wouldn't dare to accept it. Unless he never used it in front of others in the future, the dragon race would come knocking on his door sooner or later. At that time, even Feng Yin blessed land wouldn't be able to protect him. The ignorant are fearless, the ignorant are fearless. Elder Yu clicked his tongue in wonder. Looking at the entire 3,000 worlds, anyone with a little bit of knowledge wouldn't use such an artifact. Yang Kai from the Emperor realm actually dared to take it out and use it. If this wasn't ignorance, then what was? With his mind shaken, the power of that palm strike also weakened slightly. Yang Kai's spear thrust forward, and with the momentum, pushed forward 100 zhang, directly rushing to a place 30 zhang away from Elder Yu. However, this was the limit. Elder Yu's hand seals changed again, and Yang Kai's momentum came to a halt. He was fixed in place by a great force, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't advance any further. If you want to die, this old master will fulfill your wish first. Elder Yu coldly snorted, and looked at Yang Kai with a mocking gaze. He raised a palm and slapped down on Yang Kai's head. As this palm descended, a misty blue hand made of yuan qi appeared above Yang Kai's head, pressing down towards him. At this critical moment of life and death, Yang Kai suddenly grinned at him. Elder Yu suddenly had a bad premonition. Although he didn't know where this feeling came from, his heart was on high alert, as if something extremely bad was about to happen. In the next instant, he saw Yang Kai raise his hand and shoot out a ray of golden light. Within that golden light, there seemed to be a feather that was a foot long, and a monstrous evil aura surged towards him. Elder Yu's eyes widened, and all the hairs on his body stood on end. A chill ran from head to toe, and without thinking, he pushed his strength to form a solid layer of protection around himself. At the same time, he quickly retreated, putting some distance between him and Yang Kai. As the golden light shone brightly, a gigantic golden pheasant suddenly appeared, towering between the heavens and the earth. When this golden pheasant appeared, the entire secret realm trembled, as if it couldn't withstand this golden pheasant's monstrous aura. Elder Yu's eyes trembled as he stared fixedly at the golden pheasant. A name that would make anyone's face pale flashed through his mind, and he cried out involuntarily, "Mia Meng!" Even Qi Jin and the others, who had been fighting against the lady boss, were shocked. That old man Ling Chuanxiu almost turned around and ran away. Mia Meng! Even in the 3,000 realms, it was a terrifying beast with a notorious reputation. An adult Mia Meng was an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with a high-grade heaven splitter. Although it wasn't ranked as high as dragons and phoenixes, it wasn't something that a few mid-grade heaven splitters could resist. If they angered it, it could crush them all to death with a swipe of its claws. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't understand why Mia Meng would appear here. But soon, everyone discovered that this wasn't the real Mia Meng, but a divine technique of Mia Meng. Qi Jin and the others couldn't help but sigh. At this moment, Elder Yu was scared out of his wits. He was only a 4th-grade heaven splitter, so how could he block this divine technique of Mia Meng? Even though he had fled the moment he sensed that something was wrong, he still didn't feel safe at all. When Mia Meng appeared, his eyes were indifferent, as if he didn't care about anything. He stared indifferently at Elder Yu, then stretched his neck forward slightly and pecked with his beak, like a little chick eating a worm. The rapidly retreating Elder Yu was the worm that Mia Meng had mentioned. There was great terror between life and death. Elder Yu screamed, "Save me!" No one could save him. No one had expected that Elder Yu's life would be in danger when he went to deal with Yang Kai and Bai Qi. Qi Jin and the others were all focused on the lady boss, so no one had the time to help. Moreover, it was already too late. With a peck from Mia Meng, Elder Yu, who had fled tinly away, suddenly stopped. His head drooped, and his entire body was like a deflated balloon. The aura of a mid-level heaven splitter dropped at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, a huge hole had appeared in his chest and abdomen, almost taking up his entire body. One could clearly see the wriggling flesh in the wound. This kind of injury could be said to be fatal. However, a mid-level heaven splitter had vigorous vitality. As long as there were suitable conditions, it wasn't impossible to recover. However, although Elder Yu's physical body was still there was no aura of a spirit in that broken body. A mournful scream came from the other side. It was Elder Yu's voice. Yang Kai looked up and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. He saw Mia Meng opening his mouth and swallowing a blurry figure. Yang Kai could clearly see that the blurry figure was Elder Yu's spirit avatar. This scene made Yang Kai both happy and horrified. The power of Mia Meng's peck not only destroyed half of Elder Yu's physical body, but even Elder Yu's spirit avatar was pecked out and was about to be swallowed into his stomach. Ignoring Elder Yu's mournful pleas, Mia Meng swallowed the spirit avatar into his stomach. Then he lowered his head and glanced at Yang Kai. His huge body suddenly collapsed, turning into specks of golden light that dissipated between heaven and earth. Yang Kai grimaced, feeling a bit pained. The last Mia Meng golden plume was used just like that. He originally wanted to use it to deal with Ling Chuanxiu, or Yu He to reduce the pressure on the lady boss. But in the end, he used it on Elder Yu. It couldn't be said that it was a waste. If he didn't use it on Elder Yu, Lao Bai would definitely be in danger. But now he really couldn't help the lady boss anymore. He could only hope that Lao Bai would quickly advance. Moreover, he felt that he seemed to have underestimated the lady boss's strength. A 4th grade splitting the heavens couldn't even withstand a single blow from Mia Meng. Could a 5th grade splitting the heavens withstand it? It would probably end up the same way. Then, what kind of combat strength did the lady boss who could withstand Meng's attack, and only suffered a small injury. Turning his head to look, the originally precarious situation had been turned around by the lady boss. Both sides were evenly matched. Moreover, those people were also paying attention to Yang Kai while fighting with the lady boss. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. He knew that they were wary of Meng's terrifying attack, so they were constantly paying attention to his movements. They didn't know that Meng golden plume was the last one. Rolling his eyes, Yang Kai's lips curled into a sinister smile. Step by step, he walked toward the battlefield. Sure enough, as he approached, Qi Jin's expression remained unchanged, but Ling Chuanxiu and Yu He were shocked. What are you afraid of? At the critical moment, Qi Jin shouted angrily. This brat's strength is weak. So what if he can still summon Meng? He can't even get close to the battlefield. He's not a threat at all. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.